Hello, guys. Good evening. So, what happened earlier? If you were watching, something happened to my computer. All of a sudden, it shut down. So, here I am back again. So, without further ado anymore, let's just get this sketching started and go with the story of the fourth mage who doesn't want a fourth time. And we're in chapter 4.
Chapter 31, Kanoichist.
Sorry. We're in chapter chapter 73. So here we go. Just a bit of week. Let's just continue with our drawing right now. But like I said earlier, if you have watched my first big introduction that was interrupted by the stupid glitch, I'm going to start sketching a animal mech right now, and going to listen for The Dead Mage Who Doesn't Want a Fourth Time, chapter 73, volume 4, and this will be the beginning of the last time that we read was Vandally going through towns, helping people and evangelizing his goddess. And now there's another reincarnated guy who just reincarnated to the world badly and is about to assassinate him. So yeah, that's the summary, the quick one, because earlier I was talking about it, but suddenly I was cut off. But yeah, here we go. Okay, guys, I will talk to you later. But here we go. Let's go with the story.
Chapter 73, Scum approaching from afar and a scoundrel lurking nearby. I'm naked after all, Kanata shouted, having been reincarnated in Lambda stark naked. But immediately afterwards, he regained his composure. Though he hadn't wanted it, he was a man who had received standard training in an army. He hadn't forgotten the danger of making noise over trivial things when in an unknown situation. Although, if he was really a capable man, he would have kept his composure from the beginning. Leaving that aside, Kanata looking at his surroundings to examine the situation. Judging from the height of the sun in the sky, it was a little before noon. He was surrounded by a grass-covered plain with a thicket of shrubs, and there didn't seem to be any dangerous creatures, humans included, nearby. They're called humans in this world, right? It really is like a comic, for there to be sentient races other than humans, said Kanata, examining his own body once more. Though he couldn't see the fine details as he had no mirror, it seemed to him that there had been no change from how he had been in origin right before his death, other than the fact that the fatal wound in his solar plexus had disappeared. Everything was the exact same, from his trained, lean body to his moles. And as he had shouted just a moment earlier, he was standing there completely naked, but as he looked at his surroundings, something caught his eye. A dead skeleton that had fallen to pieces and its luggage, lying on the ground. Could it be that this was what that god meant when he said that he'll adjust things so that they work out? Kanata wondered. It seemed unclean and he wasn't pleased with it, but he didn't like the idea of going to kill Vandally equipped with a grass skirt and club made from the nearby plants, so he had no other choice. He searched the luggage to find numerous pieces of clothes, though they looked old, and a single rusty knife. He also found some silver and bronze coins. The owner of these belongings was probably killed by a lion or something. It feels absolutely terrible on the skin, Kanata complained to himself. It's not cotton, is it? It doesn't have any weird fungi growing on it, does it? Now then, Vandally is, this message has been set to play automatically after you have been reincarnated in Lambda. What is this? Kanata, surprised to suddenly hear Odd Corty's voice speaking, leapt away from the spot he had been standing on and raised his knife, but the god was nowhere to be seen. A moment later, he frowned as he realized that he had heard the voice inside his own head. Is this supposed to be a games tutorial or something? Now then, first of all, take some clothes and the money that will allow you to get by for the time being from the nearby corpse's belongings I've already got those. It seemed that Rod Corty's voice was something that had been recorded beforehand, so it wouldn't answer Kanata's questions or change its words based on his actions. Next, check your own status. To do this, simply think about seeing your status. Status, huh? Kanata wasn't pleased with the fact that he was being treated like a character in a game, but as instructed, he opened his own status. Name, Kaido Kanata. Race, human. Age, 29 years old. Title, non-job, non-level, 0 job history, non-attributes, vitality, 650 mana, 42,000 strength, 95 agility, 157 stamina, 204 intelligence, 270 passive skills, disease and poison resistance, level 10 death attribute resistance, level 5 fire attribute resistance, level 4 augmented stamina, level 5 augmented mana, level 5 mental corruption, level 5 active skills, fire attribute magic, level 8 wind attribute magic, level 4 mana control, level 5 archery, level 5 short sword technique, level 5 throwing, level 5 unarmed fighting technique, level 5 coordination, level 5 survival, level 3 silent steps, level 4 horseback riding, level 6 life saving, level 4 assignable active skill, level 5 unique skills, Gungna, level 10 target radar, owner of over 100 million death attribute mana, the god of reincarnation's fortune. Ho ho, so this is me, huh? It was the first time Kanata had had his abilities, skills and experience quantified in numbers since he had received report cards in school. The first time since he had died on Earth, as things had been given letter grades in Origin. As for his impressions on his status, he didn't like how his job and job history displayed none, as if he was a NEET, but he did like that his title was blank as well. As for his attribute values, he didn't think much about them. Unlike mana, things like physical strength and agility weren't quantified in numbers in Origin. Like on Earth, one's abilities were quantified by things like how many seconds it took them to run 100 meters, how many push-ups they could do and how heavy the barbells they could lift were. His mana was the same number as it had been when he had it measured in Origin, so he assumed everything else was the same. As for his skills, the disease and poison resistance and death attribute resistance were the protective measures that he had requested. However, he had nothing but questions regarding the active skills that were displayed after them. I understand the magic-related skills, but why the hell do I have archery and horseback riding? Kanata wondered. I've never used a bow or ridden a horse. Short sword technique and unarmed fighting technique is probably the training I received using a knife and military-style unarmed fighting techniques, though. And what on earth is arbitrary active skills? Your skills and experience with things that do not exist in Lambda, like the use of guns and driving automobiles, have been replaced with things like the archery and horseback riding skills. Arbitrary active skills is the remainder of those. You can assign them to the skills you think you need at a time of your own choosing. I suppose I might have more opportunities to use them than completely useless skills, but Kanata found it disagreeable that his extensive training and real combat experience in using guns and operating cars, helicopters and boats had been replaced without his permission. I suppose I'll get on with killing Vandali and being reborn in a suitable, Earth-like world, he decided. All of the things he was dissatisfied with were transient things that would only last until he was finished with his work. If he used Gungna and a target radar, the items listed under his unique skills, it probably wouldn't take that long. Though he didn't have much faith in it, he even had the god of reincarnation's fortune. How do I use the target radar? I just have to think about it. The direction and current distance of Vandali's location were displayed in Kanata's head. According to this, he wasn't that far away. If he had a helicopter, no, even a car, he could get there in a single day. I don't even have a car, let alone a helicopter. It'd be pretty rough to travel that far on foot. Should I steal a horse or something? Hey, God, I did say that I didn't want to encounter him unexpectedly, but you didn't have to fling me into this place so far away from him, you know? Realizing that he had limited methods of transport, a crease appeared between Kanata's eyebrows. It was possible to fly with wind attribute magic, but he didn't have enough mana for that. And if Kanata were to encounter an enemy while using magic to fly, his methods of attacking would be limited. It would be a different story if he had a gun. Unlike your skills, your attribute values are not particularly high compared to those holding combat-related occupations in Lambda. It would be best if you first go to a city, register at an adventurer's guild, acquire a job, prepare your equipment and learn about martial skills. In response to the voice he heard in his mind, Kanata shook his head, thinking about how complicated this all was. Like I said, I have no intention of doing these things that have been taken straight out of a stupid game, he said. But the one thing he did agree on was that he should prepare his equipment. He wouldn't be able to complete this job in the next few days, and with that being the case, he would need food. If you go straight east from the place you have been reincarnated, you will come out onto the highway. You should find the means to accomplish these objectives there. Well, I suppose I'll obey those instructions, Kanata decided. He didn't intend to hunt while looking for edible grass, so he began walking east as he was told. Before long, he heard a scream. When he dashed towards the scream to find out what was happening, he saw armed men who appeared to be outlaws at a glance, attacking a carriage. Hannah, father, run. All right. If you don't want the daughter of your employer to die, throw your weapons aside, all of you. It seemed that the bandits had taken the daughter of the traveling merchant hostage. Now, they were instructing the adventurers who had been hired as guards to disarm. What a cliché, Kanata murmured to himself. Was Kanata supposed to learn the direction of the nearest city and gain transport, food and money here? At least, Kanata himself interpreted it this way, so he quickly began reciting an incantation. The daughter and the items that the humans are wearing. Great incineration. Flames burst forth from the pentagram that had appeared in front of Kanata's hands, engulfing all of the bandits as well as the girl who had been taken hostage. Hannah. The bandits screamed as they were burned alive, as did the girl. Huh? It's not hot? Though the flames surrounded the girl, they didn't inflict any damage on her. There wasn't a single mark on her clothes or even the equipment the bandits had been wearing. Only the bandits' bodies had been burned. It seems that my gift, Gungna, is just as easy to use as it was in origin. The cheat-like ability that Kanata had received from Rod Corti, Gungna. It was an ability that allowed penetration of selected targets. It allowed him and people and objects in contact with him to penetrate physical objects and energies. To use it, Kanata had to designate targets for penetration. When using this ability before dying in Origin, he had made the bullets he fired penetrate the building to hit the terrorists and made bullets and knives pass through him, making himself invulnerable to their attacks. Now, he had designated the girl and the equipment on her and the bandits' bodies as targets for the ability, scorching only the bandits' bodies into burned, black matter. The greater the range of targets for Gungna, the more mana it consumed. Thanks to his mana pool of over 40,000, this wasn't a problem as long as Kanata didn't use it excessively. But the problem was that it also had a weakness. His attacks could penetrate any physical or magical defenses, and he could use the ability to avoid any attacks towards him. But by looking at him, one could easily tell what weapons they should use to attack him. Obviously, if he had designated bullets as Gungna's target, then he wouldn't be able to use a gun, and if he had designated knives as the target, then he wouldn't be able to hold a knife. If he designated light as the target and became transparent, he would be blind as his eyes couldn't receive light. If he designated heat as the target, he would rapidly lose body heat. And if he designated human bodies as the target, he wouldn't be able to touch others. That was why the moment he had rescued the president's daughter who had been held captive, it was certain that a bare-handed attack would definitely hit him. In fact, I was attacked by Metamorph's hand her body. Kanata's weakness had been completely taken advantage of. He decided not to get in range for close quarters combat with skilled opponents from now on. Oh, it's just like a miracle, Hannah, father. Thank you so much for saving my daughter. Kanata, who had been painfully immersed in the memories from his previous life, came to his senses as the merchant called out to him in delight at his daughter's safety. Hey, I have a question. Which way do I have to go to find a city? Kanata asked, realizing that they were speaking Japanese. A city? The merchant repeated, blinking in confusion at Kanata's attitude and the fact that he hadn't even introduced himself. The closest one is Tia City, down the highway in this direction. This way? I just have to go down this highway. The road doesn't branch at all? Kanata asked. There is a small branched road that leads to a village, but you can reach the city by following the larger one, said the merchant. Did you happen to lose your way? No, I'm not lost anymore, said Kanata. I've acquired transport, equipment and enough food and money for now, after all. What do you mean? I'll start with this. Man. The merchant felt a dull impact. Kargofu? Before he could understand anything that was happening, his beloved daughter opened her eyes wide as blood spurted from her mouth. Hannah? A rusty knife had been thrust deep into the chest of the merchant's daughter, who was supposed to be safe in his arms. Oh, it pierced deeper than I thought, Kanata remarked. Is this what these skill things are? Hannah-san? What do you think you're doing? Why would you do such a thing? Kanata casually watched the girl who had started spasming with her eyes still wide open in disbelief and her father who was giving a heartbroken scream. Astonished, the adventurers raised their weapons towards him. Why, you ask? Because her name is Hannah, Kanata replied. It's the same name as the president's daughter that Mari disguised herself as, so it's an unpleasant name to me, and since this is something that the god set up for me, I'm distracting myself. In other words, I'm just venting my anger, I suppose. Haha, how pitiful. What are you saying? Asked an adventurer in response to Kanata's words that made absolutely no sense to him, looking afraid. On the other hand, the other adventurer seemed to have decided that Kanata was an enemy to be disposed of. Die, you lunatic. Kanata evaded the spear thrusted at him by the adventurer with the absolute minimum movement required, closed the distance between them and easily reached into the adventurer's pocket. What, if this is all you have, won't my bare hands be enough? But just in case, weapons, armor. Wah. Gacha. Unfortunately for the adventurers, the level of Kanata's unarmed fighting technique from his training in the army was equivalent to a class adventurer's. The two of them, who were a D&D class adventurer, couldn't overcome this difference in ability. Kanata was even being cowardly enough to use Gungna, slipping through the resistance that the adventurers were trying to put up with their weapons and armor, attacking them one-sidedly with punches and kicks that made contact directly with their bodies. Before long, the two adventurers were lying on the ground with the whites of their eyes showing. Even if that girl's name was Beth or Hangako or something instead of Hannah, I would have disposed of her after raping her anyway. So if you're blaming yourself and thinking that she died because you named her Hannah, you don't have to worry about it, Kanata told the merchant. The merchant's daughter had already died due to the knife puncturing her lung, and he was still holding on to her in a daze. Of course, he wasn't thinking anything of the sort. This, do you think you can get away with this? Eventually, the day will come where you will be judged. He shouted. Come on, you're just a character in this game-like world, don't get so serious on me, said Kanata. I'm telling you, it's fine. The god Rod Corti will probably have her reborn as somebody somewhere else. I'm intending to do the same before this judgment or whatever. Comes to me, anyway. Giving a light laugh at the grief and anger of the father who had lost his daughter, Kanata burned the merchant's body and turned him to ash without damaging his clothes, just like he had done to the bandits. It's my first time riding a horse, but with the horseback riding skill, it'll probably be fine, Kanata said as he threw the belongings and equipment of the merchant, adventurers and bandits into the carriage, got inside and rode towards the city. He equipped the merchant's knife with lightning bolt-shaped patterns carved into its handle, which seemed to have been his lucky charm, at his waist. Rod Corti's careless selection of who to reincarnate was the greatest failure he had ever committed. While reincarnating those who had died in the explosion on the ferry, he had indeed excluded the evil terrorists. However, as for the crew and passengers, he had simply asked whether they would accept his reincarnation or not, and had made no effort to select them. Their personalities, dispositions, mental strength and sense of morals. Rod Corti hadn't examined any of these. The criteria of whether they were evil or not at the moment of their death on Earth was far too simple a criterion, it couldn't even be called an examination. Despite that, despite taking some things into consideration, he was forcing the mental burden of being reincarnated in foreign worlds upon them, multiple times. As a result, there were some who had made brilliant achievements in origin such as Amamiya Hiroto, but there were also those like Kanata. Rod Corti hadn't expected Kanata to perform such acts of violence, either, but Kanata had already been reborn in Lambda. Rod Corti was no longer able to control his actions, nor could he rely on unstable divine messages to convey his will. This isn't why I had you reborn in that place, but no, this is but a trivial problem, Rod Corti told himself. With Kaido Kanata's abilities, unlike Vandali, he wouldn't cause more than 1,000 deaths with the acts of violence he committed along the way. Despite being underdeveloped, even Lambda wouldn't be significantly influenced by these. But is he really not planning to acquire a job, increase his level or learn about martial skills? Rod Corti wondered. Even if Lambda is inferior in culture and civilization, the people's individual skills in combat are greater than those of people of Earth or origin. Frodo had never been blessed with luck, but considered himself to be outstanding. That was why he had believed that with just a little luck, everything in his next plan would go well. He would receive the reward he desired and be added to the ranks of mages employed in the Hartner Duchy. But what the hell is this guy? As Frodo walked towards the 7th cultivation village with the 3 adventurers, Kasim and his friends, he glanced at Vandali. There was currently a common familial conflict occurring in the Hartner family of dukes. The head of the family was still alive, but he was bedridden with illness, causing him difficulties with his official work. He had two sons who possessed the right to succeed him. The eldest son, Lucas's mother, was the Duke's concubine. He was an extraordinary man with bravery and tactical genius who was currently serving as the leader of the Knights Order, and he had tremendous support from the Hartner Duchy's army. The second son, Belton's mother, was the Duke's legal wife. He was talented in dealing with domestic affairs, had the support of many civil officials and had connections with the central government. He was expected to make further developments in the Hartner Duchy if he were elected. Normally, it would be ideal if Belton succeeded the family of dukes as he was the son of the Duke's legal wife, while Lucas made use of his tactical genius in directing the army, whose presence had increased due to the Hartner Duchy becoming the front line in the war against the Amid Empire. However, the way of thinking that each brother possessed did not match the others. Belton, the second son, believed that defenses against the Amid Empire ought to be strengthened while efforts were put into domestic affairs, prioritizing defending the duchy against the empire's weapons. That was why he had sent the troublesome refugees in the cities, who were the primary cause of the deteriorating public order, to remote regions under the pretense of cultivation, while in fact this was little more than a project set up to leave the refugees to fend for themselves. This had caused a sharp drop in the refugee numbers inside cities. He had sent the inhabitants of the cultivation villages that had failed to the slave-run mines to squeeze out the rest of the dwindling supply of metal while enacting policies to maintain forts and strengthen garrisons. Lucas, the eldest son, advocated that efforts should be placed in retaking the Sauron Duchy in the name of justice, piercing the Amid Empire's shields and gaining glory for the Hartner Duchy. For this reason, he believed that the refugees, the primary cause of the deteriorating public order, should be conscripted and used as disposable, low-grade troops while sinking funds into the army's budget to increase the number of regular soldiers, leaving the maintenance of public order to the guards and adventurers. The two plans were polar opposites of each other, and because each brother believed that their own plans were for the good of the Hartner Duchy, they were having a dispute. This had caused a division within their supporters and those who stood to benefit from the execution of either plan into separate factions. Froto's viewpoints were far biased towards Lucas's side. He had suffered defeat in a power struggle within the Mage's Guild. One day, one of the members of Lucas's Knight's Order had called out to him while he sat pitifully by a window, having been forgotten by everyone. The knight had told him that they were looking for someone to infiltrate the cultivation villages, pretending to be a priest of Alder. Despite being a plan to simply leave the refugees to fend for themselves, Belton's cultivation project was going unexpectedly well. Only one of the 7 cultivation villages had been abandoned, and though there were differences in prosperity between the other 6 villages, it seemed that they would last for at least 5 more years. If a cultivation project that had been designed to fail ended up succeeding, those of Belton's faction would praise his ability in managing domestic affairs even more, advocating that he, who possessed the blood of the Duke's legal wife, would manage the duchy far better than his boorish older brother. This alone wouldn't end the familial dispute, but for Lucas's faction, it was best for Belton to have as few achievements and as many failures as possible. This was where Froto had come in. He had begun masquerading as a priest of Alder years ago and traveled to a different village from one of Lucas's spies who was disguised as a traveling merchant, leaking information to Lucas's faction. Gaining the trust of the villagers had been simple. Priests didn't have guild cards like adventurers, and there were plenty of wandering priests, so even the church in the city wasn't aware of his actions. Unlike proper priests and high priests, clergymen of his position didn't have qualifications or anything of the sort, so they didn't serve in churches and there were no records of them. To take an extreme example, anyone could become a priest as long as he dressed like one and possessed the scriptures or memorized enough of them to preach them. If he could even use magic other than of the light and life attributes and was cultured and knowledgeable, it would be even more perfect. The clergyman's skill exists in Lambda, but it is a skill that represents the ability to conduct rituals such as those of purification and the ability to preach. If one could feign these abilities, it is surprisingly simple to masquerade as a priest. It probably wouldn't work in cities where multiple proper clergymen worked, but what the people of small villages want from traveling priests is medicine, knowledge, education in reading and writing, preaching and ways to pass the time, such as stories of heroes and saints. And thanks to the information that Froto and the others had gathered, plans to empty the cultivation villages had finally been executed. Though the number of candidates to be conscripted as low-grade troops would decrease somewhat, reducing Belton's achievements even by a little was more than enough of a benefit to do so. But this guy interfered with everything. All of the plans had been crude, far from meticulous. Froto and the others weren't experts in conspiracies and subversive activities to begin with. If such experts were used, it would be noticed quickly by those of Belton's faction, which was why people like Froto were being used in the first place. But even so, those plans should have been more than enough to inflict devastating damage to these small villages. Vandali saved the lives of Kasim's party and Ivan. That didn't really matter. It had been decided that the 7th cultivation village, which was close to the highway, would be destroyed sometime in the future anyway. But misfortune befell the spy disguised as a traveling merchant, who distributed poison to the 5th cultivation village to wipe the villagers out. He failed to poison the hunter named Kine. The spy had been told a date where there was no hunting planned, but Kine had changed his plans, or perhaps the spy had simply gotten the date wrong. Either way, Kine came to the 7th cultivation village where Froto was, seeking help. Even so, Froto had no way of helping him cure villagers, nor would he even have made it in time. If Froto arrived at the village the next day when all the villagers were dead and declared that it was an epidemic, the mass poisoning incident would have been hushed up without incident. But Vandali flew to the village with Kine on his back, saying that he could kill him. Kine had been doubtful, but Vandali had already healed Ivan. Because of this, everyone in the 7th cultivation village assured him that Vandali would be able to save the villagers, leaving Froto unable to deny his ability or stop him from going. It was a fool's errand. Even if he did manage to save anyone, it would be a few villagers at most. No, it was reasonable to assume that he would run out of mana and fall out of the sky before even reaching the village. That was what Froto thought as he insincerely expressed worry for Kine and Vandali, headed out to see what had become of the 5th cultivation village, and to his surprise, found that all of the villagers were alive. They looked somewhat exhausted, but that was the extent of the damage. Though this was an unbelievable nightmare, he somehow managed to look happy and exclaim that this was a miracle as he chased after Vandali, who had headed for another village. Froto heard of Vandali's deeds, wondering if he really was having a nightmare. He cured diseases without reciting any incantations, healed burns and wounds, and created medicine from his fingertips, actually, his claws. He flew down from the sky to defeat the orcs sent by Froto's companion, a tamer, in a single attack, saving the life of a boy who was supposed to die. When nobody was looking, he had even created a well that could be used as soon as a pulley and bucket was installed. Even villages that had been supposed to be wiped out by bandit attacks were still going strong. There was no doubt that Vandali had something to do with this. And in the 2nd cultivation village, Vandali purified the poisoned fertilizer distributed by Froto's superiors and even taught the villagers how to use goblins as emergency rations. There was no other way to describe this as anything other than divine work. Who on earth is this dump? Could he be a spy from Belton's side? No, if that were the case, he would be Belton's trump card. Someone capable of doing these things wouldn't be an improvised spy like me. There is no way that such a trump card would be deployed to a place like this, so is he really someone who was simply passing through? Froto timidly looked towards Vandali, only to accidentally make eye contact with him. This guy? Does he actually suspect me after all? Is there something wrong? Asked Vandali. Froto felt himself breaking out into a cold sweat as he saw his own terrified face reflected Vandali's eyes, which were looking at him as if they had seen through everything. No, it is nothing, Froto replied, barely managing to prevent his voice from breaking. I see, Vandali said as he directed his gaze elsewhere. This guy is too dangerous. Froto thought. I must report him to Kakan Dono. Kakan was a man of the Knight's Order, the one giving instructions Froto and the others, the one who had taken command of this operation. Unlike the spy disguised as a traveling merchant, who had left the village behind without even staying to confirm the results of his work, the tamer was probably already heading back to make his report, but that wasn't enough. Once Froto returned to the 7th cultivation village, he would have to leave within the same day and head to the city to make his own report. Despite Froto being so wary of Vandali, Vandali didn't suspect Froto at all. Danger sense, Death couldn't detect people's intentions other than those intending to kill him or cause him injury, and Vandali himself wasn't sharp enough to see what people were truly thinking just by looking at them. Even when Froto had thought their eyes met, Vandali had simply been staring vaguely at the sky and happened to look at Froto by coincidence. Expressionlessness is often mistaken for anger, but Vandali's expressionless was completely empty, like the face of a doll. Because of this, everyone who looked at him interpreted his expression differently. If looked at with friendly eyes like those of the villagers, then he appeared friendly. If he was stared at with eyes of suspicion like Froto's, then he appeared as if he was suspecting the viewer. What Vandali was currently thinking was something that everyone has thought at least once. I want to become a bird, someone, please give me wings. Why did he have to make the effort of walking for an hour when he could use flight? Of course, he understood that Kasim, his companions and the priest wouldn't be able to keep up with him. If he tried to carry them like he did Kine, this many people would definitely be over the weight limit. It would use too much mana. And Vandali wasn't large enough to have 4 people riding on top of him. If a strong gust of wind blew or they were attacked by a monster like a giant raven, someone might fall off. That was why there was no choice but to walk on the ground's surface. Vandali had been staring at the sky, thinking that he wouldn't have to go through this trouble if he could use a spell that allowed him to fly while carrying multiple people. And then something suddenly occurred to him. Huh? If I want wings, I can just grow them, can't I? Indeed, if he wanted wings, he could simply grow them. Having thought of this, Vandali wanted to try it out right away, but he restrained himself. It would be impossible to convince these people that it's light attribute magic. I'll try it out after I reach the 7th cultivation village and head for the city with Eleonora and the others. Chapter 74, Smooth Flight Through the Sky, Eating Various Things in the City. Eleonora frequently thought about how right she was in her firm belief that this small damper was far more fiercer than Burkine and the other pure-breed vampires. She was thinking the same tonight as well, but at the same time, as she thought about the policies of her master, the most fearsome being in this world, she asked herself, why? By selling the goblin head-shaped communication devices, Vandali could easily acquire a fortune and the position of Baron, so why was he so fixated on the process of becoming an adventurer, gaining achievements and becoming a nobleman? Even without the communication devices, he could use Glum transmutation to change the shapes of gemstones or even magic stones, combine them and turn pebble-sized gemstones into large ones worthy of shining in the crown of a king. Wouldn't he be able to easily gain the status of honorary nobleman if he demonstrated this ability? For magic stones, only magic stones from monsters of the same race with the same rank could be combined due to issues with mana compatibility, but even so, Vandali would be able to combine magic stones to create larger ones when previously the only improvement possible was to polish them. These were Eleonora's thoughts, but Vandali had told her, I can only see a future where influential people turn me into a slave or something and simply extract my mana for their own use. Indeed, Eleonora didn't believe that all influential people were virtuous. In fact, she believed that over 90% of them were conspirators or villains. But at the same time, she believed that unimaginably foolish influential people would make up less than 10%. I think that as long as they are not unimaginably foolish, they would realize that turning Vandali-sama into their enemy would lead to their ruin. But, enormous, black wings flapped gently. The wings that had grown from the back of her master. It feels nice to fly like this, said Vandali. Everyone, how does the ride feel? He asked. Things are great here, too, replied Zran. The wind is strong, but it's perfect for a hot summer's night. You're amazing, King, said Braga. The humans making camp on the ground look like ants. Eleonora gave a vague smile as she glanced sideways at Zran, Braga and the other black goblins who were shouting excitedly. Vandali-sama, the ride is comfortable. But why have you changed? No, evolved, just for a method of transport? Eleonora questioned. I just grew some spirit form wings, I haven't done any changing or evolving, replied Vandali. With 3 pairs of wings protruding from the neck of a bird consisting of only a torso, he resembled a very ominous bird indeed. Vandali had returned to the 7th cultivation village, said farewell to the priest who had left for the city in a hurry, killed time doing training and such with Kasim and his friends, and spent the night at the Jack-of-all-trades store. In his room, he had informed Eleonora and the others that he was heading for the city tomorrow. Incidentally, the room in the Jack-of-all-trades store was nothing but a room with 8 people's worth of crudely made bunk beds of straw. It didn't rely on its income as an inn in the first place, so the bunk beds had apparently been made by the owner himself. There was no disadvantage for him to have Vandali stay there in addition to Kasim and his friends. The owner was quite shrewd, he had decided that this made them even for having mistaken Vandali for a ghost. Leaving that aside, Vandali had regrouped with Eleonora and the others and immediately began trying to execute his idea. Using the spirit form transformation spell, the spirit form skill and the materialization skill, he began trying to grow wings. Now that he thought about it, Bone Bird, who was now a part of Notchen, had used spirit form feathers with its bone wings to fly. Also, Vandali had been using spirit form transformation to grow extra limbs and heads and even branched them out into tentacle shapes. With that being the case, wouldn't he be able to grow something like wings fairly easily? And wouldn't he be able to use these wings to fly? That was why Vandali tried it. He used spirit form transformation on part of his back, used the spirit form skill to change its shape the way he imagined it in his mind and stretched it out. He materialized it here and there using the materialization skill, adjusting the skill's intensity depending on the spot. And so, Vandali acquired enormous wings. Each of the wings was as long as a wing of a jumbo jet, and the torso was large enough for Eleonora and the others to ride on with room to spare. Perhaps because they were made of spirit form, or because he had used an owl's wings as a reference, or perhaps because his death attribute Magic's erase presence was active. The wings made almost no noise despite their size. He was flying at a height where arrows wouldn't reach, at a speed equivalent to a racehorse sprinting at full speed. Though the wings' black color was inconspicuous in the night sky, if people on the ground did notice Vandali, perhaps they would faint in terror. Vandali-sama, are you planning to go beyond creating legends and start creating myths? Asked Eleonora. It's nothing as exaggerated as that, said Vandali. There are lots of flaws, too. As a method of transport, it is indeed inferior to the teleportation spell of the space attribute, said Eleonora. But even so, no, even Nochen could do this much, said Vandali. At the very least, it would be able to fly while carrying everyone here. That's true. But, and you know, even if you consider the fact that no other people could do this, it doesn't give me any additional options in the future other than spending my days running a delivery business. Indeed, since no other person was capable of this, even if one were to tell Vandali to do it in a way that other people could replicate it, it would be impossible. And there are flaws to this. To fly like this, I need multiple instances of parallel thought processing and high-speed thought processing, and it consumes a lot of mana, Vandali explained. And since I can't handle tight turns, fighting in the air is impossible. He had only tried it out as a method of transportation in the first place, so he supposed that this was how it was. But it consumes much less mana than the flight spell, so it's not unusable, he added. We're almost at the city, so I'll be descending now. And so, Vandali and his companions made the journey between the 7th cultivation village and the city, which would normally take 3 days, in a single night. Of course, they had passed by Hiroto, the man disguised as a priest of Elder who had left the village before them, along the way. Incidentally, Kanata was currently using his stolen carriage to head towards a city to the north, past the duchy's capital. The next morning, he would be surprised to see that the distance between himself and Vandali displayed by his target radar changed significantly within a single night. The level of the spirit form skill has increased. The city of Niaki. Until the cultivation project began, it had been a city on the southern tip of the Hartner Duchy for over 100 years, and currently, it had returned to being the southernmost city. It had a population of 10,000. Its lord was Viscount Niaki. This city was the capital of his region. There was a young, white-haired boy wearing a crude eye patch made of cloth, walking around among the crowd in this city's marketplace. He looked at his surroundings with an unimpressed-looking gaze before suddenly approaching a store that his eyes had stopped on. An apple, he said. They're 1 bomb each, said the middle-aged woman standing in the store with rows of fruit. The boy searched the inside of his cloth bag, seemingly unaccustomed to doing so, before finding a silver coin and handing it over. The woman stared at the silver coin without blinking, and then snorted. This is fake, isn't it? There is no way that a brat like you would have silver coins. I don't know if you're a refugee or an orphan, but get lost, she spat. But despite her words, the woman pocketed the silver coin that the boy had handed her. It seemed that she had no intention of giving it back. What are you looking at? Hurry up and get lost. Do you want me to call the guards? She shouted. Her voice caused owners of other stores and people going back and forth around the marketplace to look towards the boy, but none of them had any compassion in their eyes. They looked at him with irritation, scorn and disgust. The boy's expression didn't change at all despite receiving such gazes, and he left the store quietly. He turned his body around in a natural manner and vanished. Phew, what a weird brat, said the woman who had acquired a 50 bomb silver coin as the corners of her lips rose in a smile. She hadn't noticed that there was now 1 less apple in her store. The boy, Vandali, was biting into the apple in a place away from public attention. He didn't believe that he had stolen it, as the woman had received 50 times the correct amount in payment. This city is wild, he murmured. He had thought that his appearance wasn't dirty, but the cloth that he was wearing over his eye to conceal the fact that he was a damp apparently gave the impression that he was a refugee or an orphan with no parents. It was possible that his long hair covering his pointed ears only further strengthened that impression. Well, even if his ears were seen, people might assume that he was a half-elf often. The thing that shocked him was that the refugees were hated in the city more than he had imagined. It seemed that the people of the city blamed the refugees for the things they were dissatisfied about. Indeed, ever since the refugees had come from the Sauron Duchy, the economy had worsened, the taxes had become harsher and public order had deteriorated. There were more positions for day-to-day work than before, and the refugees were competing for these jobs with the people who had always lived in the city. Vandali had no intention of unconditionally taking the refugees' side. He did think that the deteriorating public order and competition over work was problematic for the people who had always lived in the Hartner Duchy. However, the reason for the economy being worse and the taxes becoming harsher was because the Hartner Duchy was putting effort into increasing its military presence, as it was now the front line in the war against the Amid Empire since Sauron Duchy had been captured. If the people were dissatisfied with that, they shouldn't be blaming the refugees but the politicians who had lost the war and the Amid Empire who had attacked. It wasn't logical for them to blame anything else. The youngsters of these days are quick to torment the weak. That beach, that woman at the fruit store, I'll curse her to death. So give me manna. Anyhow, the lord of the region has been acting strange lately. It was only yesterday that Perhaps it was actually 10 years ago? The password is, ale and moba bin stir-free. They'll tell you that they're out, but ignore them and repeat the same order one more time. Then you'll be able to meet the people from the fangs of dark nights. Hi. If you want to have good dreams, I recommend the Indigo Legs to the west. They have plenty of good prostitutes there. I see, said Vandali. The moment he asked to hear more about this city and the Hartner Duchy, the spirits had begun talking noisily. As he listened to them, Vandali thought about the discrimination against the refugees, which was to the point that human rights organizations and the media would have a field day if it was happening on Earth. Why do people feel the desire to discriminate against other people of the same nation? He wondered. It was a problem that had been present on Earth and in Origin as well, but I see. For the people of the city, for the people of the Hartner Duchy, the refugees from the Sauron Duchy aren't people from the same nation. In this world, where making journeys was dangerous even if using highways, it was common for people to spend their entire lives in the villages or cities that they were born in. For them, their societies were those villages and cities. People coming from outside those villages and cities were essentially outsiders, equivalent to being foreigners. And the Orborn Kingdom was a nation that was made up of a collection of smaller nations. Each duchy was one of the nations that had existed since the kingdom's foundation. Because of this, even for those involved in politics, their fellow countrymen were only the people of their duchies, and those from other duchies were foreigners. To the people of the Hartner Duchy, the people of the Sauron Duchy were not people from the same nation. At this rate, the people of the cultivation villages will have a hard future ahead of them, said Vandali. Even the apple that Vandali was taking his second bite of shocked him. To summarize its flavor in one word, it was disappointing. It did taste like an apple, but it wasn't good enough to be put on the shelves in the supermarkets of Earth. It was neither sweet nor sour, even its texture was lacking. It was a failure when compared to a cobalt fruit. But it wasn't that this apple was inferior. It was that the cobalt fruit was outstanding. The flavor that Vandali remembered was the flavor of apples in Japan, on Earth. Despite nobody having given cobalt fruits any assistance, they contained flavor in their flesh that could rival the flavor of apples that farmers had spent a great deal of effort in selectively breeding. Considering that, Vandali now understood why cobalt fruits sold for 10 namids each, or 10 bombs in the Orborn Kingdom. Leaving that aside, I'll sneak into the Mage's Guild tonight and look for an old spirit, he decided. There are apparently items with history in the Mage's Guild, commonly known as cursed items. There should at least be one old, evil spirit or vengeful spirit. I've been talking to myself a lot. I shouldn't be acting alone after all, Vandali thought as he walked off, still munching on the disappointing apple. Somewhere along his way, he got into a fight with a hoodlum who had followed him after seeing him produce a silver coin in the marketplace, but the hoodlum didn't know anything about Princess Olivia and the other titans, either. The hoodlum's blood did taste better than the apple, however. In the archives of the small Mages Guild branch of the city of Niaki, there was a magical tome that had been sealed away, feared to be a cursed, forbidden tome. It was a cursed item, said to contain forbidden knowledge that granted power to those who read it, but at the cost of their sanity, changing them to have cruel personalities. According to one theory, the tome contained not forbidden knowledge, but an evil god whose powers had been robbed from him, sealed inside the tome, entering the minds of those who read the book and brainwashing them in an attempt to remove the seal. That theory was 90% true. Hi, it seems that another fool has opened me. Buberdura, the evil god of the magic tome whose power had been robbed from him, felt joy stirring in his heart. In the past, he had been defeated by Farman Gold and lost his power. He transformed himself into a book and now, he was seeking readers in order to restore his power. By possessing and manipulating the readers that opened and read him, he absorbed their power like a leech to regain his own. I have finally recovered half of my power. Tonight, I shall seize the body of this fool, turn him into my possessed servant and use him as a foothold towards my full recovery, he told himself. With a thud, the pages fluttered open. Not letting this moment escape him, Buberdura flew into the mind of this reader. Now then, I shall manipulate you, just as I have done to all of the foolish prey who have come before you. The body of Buberdura's will, which resembled an ugly combination between an arthropod and a mollusk, extended its tentacles into the center of the mind of the reader. Resistance would be completely impossible, Buberdura's mind would violate the reader's mind in an overwhelming manner. At least, the evil god had assumed that this would happen, as this was how things had gone up until now. Mew? What is the meaning of this? I cannot reach it. No matter how much Buberdura extended his tentacles, he couldn't reach the memories and personality that he wanted to tamper with. Flustered, he extended his tentacles as far as they could go, but even so, only a few of them barely managed to touch something at all. And the thing that he touched caused him deep bewilderment as well. What is this? Why are things like this? Impossible. Why does it have this structure? Is this reader really someone from this world? He wondered. Buberdura had invaded the minds of hundreds, thousands of people. In a way, he was an expert when it came to minds. To his knowledge and experience, there were no people with minds like this. It was unsystematic. Things that were supposed to be in certain places weren't. Instead, there were things with completely different shapes that weren't supposed to be there at all. If comparing it to a person's body, it was as if a small intestine in the shape of a liver had been packed into the place where the brain was supposed to be. It was completely incomprehensible. It was as bizarre as a castle forcibly built from random junk. As Buberdura came to this conclusion, a terrifying possibility rose in his mind. That is right, I have heard that after the demon King Sama broke the souls of the four champions, some god gathered their fragments together and forcibly joined them into a single soul. If something were to break that soul again, Buberdura realized something, mid-sentence. There was a deep opening above his head. And as the opening moved, he let out a scream of terror. The opening widened a little, revealing an enormous sigh. Buberdura saw himself reflected in its dull, mud-like pupil. A noise that sounded like fragments of metal scraping against each other echoed from behind him. He turned around immediately to see that there was a deep crack there as well. A tongue far thicker and more terrifying than Buberdura's tentacles extended from the crack towards him. He screamed again. The tongue wrapped around Buberdura, the evil god of the magic tome, and crushed him. Buberdura finally understood the meaning of the noise that he hadn't been able to hear properly. It had said, "How itchy." And so, the evil god whom Farman Gold had failed to defeat, who had hidden for 100,000 years while slurping up the minds of his victims and was finally about to make a recovery, was destroyed by a certain reader who had made a casual attack, as if merely brushing away a winged insect that had stopped on his neck. Having turned the ground into golems and used golem transmutation to dig a tunnel in order to infiltrate the Mage's Guild from underground, Vandally investigated inside, searching for spirits. He found some spirits. But unfortunately, they were old and on the brink of being extinguished, had no interest in anything other than magic even after death, or had gone mad, becoming unable to speak incoherent sentences. None of them knew about the first Princess Livia. The spirits in the city didn't know anything either. Would it be better if I asked people who are alive? But it's questionable as to whether the people of this city would give me honest answers. Though he was worried about this matter, he was also searching the archives for any forbidden techniques that could be used for Dasa's resurrection. Suddenly, a mage's spirit informed him that there was a single forbidden tome in the archives. It was apparently an evil tome that granted those who read it great power, in exchange for also bestowing upon them a destiny of ruin. Intrigued, Vandally used death attribute magic to remove the seal that had been placed on the tome and tried holding the tome in his hands. I do feel an ominous presence, but it's not really that big a deal. Though he could feel mana, There was only a feeble reaction from danger sense, death. He could only think of the book as unimportant. It was such an unthreatening forbidden tome that Vandali wondered if it was the metal reinforcements on its corners that were supposed to be dangerous. Thinking that there wouldn't be much to expect, Vandali opened the forbidden tome to find that its pages were filled with figures resembling geometric shapes rather than I don't think that these would grant power. As Vandali thought about this, he suddenly felt an unpleasant, itching sensation. Your mana has increased by 50 million. The mental corruption skill has transformed into the grotesque mind skill. You have acquired the body expansion, tongue, and mental encroachment skills. The levels of the superhuman strength, rapid healing, magic resistance, soul break, god slayer, body expansion, tongue, and grotesque mind skills have increased. For some reason, Vandali gained additional mana, new skills, and his skills leveled up. Though he was surprised, he checked his status to find that everything was as the announcer in his head had said. Name, Vandali. Race, Damper. Dark Elf. Age, 7 years old. Title: Ghoul King, Eclipse King, Taboo. Name: Job, Venom Fist. User level, 20. Job history: Death attribute Mage, Gloom Transmuter, Undead Tamer. Soulbreaker attributes: Vitality, 184 mana, 378,120,344, increased by 50 million strength, 128 agility, 130 stamina, 119 intelligence, 761 passive skills, superhuman strength, level 3, level up. Rapid healing, level 5, level up. Death attribute magic, level 6 status effect resistance, level 7 magic resistance, level 3, level up. Dark vision death attribute charm, level 6 chant revocation, level 4 strengthen followers, level 8 automatic mana recovery, level 4 strengthen subordinates, level 4 venom secretion, claws, fangs, tongue, level 3, level up. Enhanced agility, level 1 body expansion, tongue, level 3, new. Active skills, blood sucking, level 7, level up. Surpass limits, level 5 Gloom transmutation, level 6 no attribute magic, level 5 mana control, level 4 spirit form, level 7, level up. Carpentry, level 4 engineering, level 3 cooking, level 4 alchemy, level 4 unarmed fighting technique, level 5, level up. Soul break, level 6, level up. Multicast, level 5 long distance control, level 6 surgery, level 3, level up. Parallel thought processing, level 5 materialization, level 4 coordination, level 3 high speed thought processing, level 3 commanding, level 1 farming, level 3 clothing, level 2 throwing, level 3 unique skills, god slayer, level 3, level up. Grotesque mind, level 2, transformed from mental corruption mental encroachment, level 2, new. Curses, experience gained in previous life not carried over cannot learn existing jobs unable to gain experience independently. I see, I definitely acquired power, but if simply reading the book was enough to grant 50 million mana, it certainly was great power for normal people. It was the equivalent to the mana pools of 5,000 first-rate mages. It wouldn't be strange for them to lose themselves in it and bring ruin upon themselves. The unique skill called Grotesque Mind seemed dangerous. But why had the Soul Break and God Slayer skills leveled up? The Mental Corruption skill had transformed into a unique skill for some reason as well. And most importantly, what is this body expansion, tongue? I can expand my tongue. Ah, it expanded. Vandali tried sticking his tongue out of his mouth to find that it could stretch outwards. There wasn't any pain or unpleasant, stiff sensation. As naturally as bending and stretching his limbs, Vandali could stretch his tongue to a length of less than a meter, but longer than his arms. He could even move it with complete freedom. He could bend it like a snake or extend it quickly, like when a frog used its tongue to catch insects. He could probably even wrap it around a pen and use it to write. It was as if he had gained an extra hand. Sharp tongue. He tried using the martial skill that used his tongue to pierce the target to find that it functioned normally. Its range was far shorter than when he had sent his tongue flying, but with this he would be able to use it multiple times in quick succession. Vandali didn't know what the mental encroachment and grotesque mind skills were, but he had indeed gained power. He didn't know what would become of the destiny of ruin that he was supposed to receive along with it. All of the people who have read this forbidden tome Did they all gain the ability to extend their tongues as well? If that caused them to be treated like freaks and made them fail in their relationships with others and their work, that really would be a destiny of ruin, I guess. On Earth, someone with the ability to stretch their tongues to a length of a meter would be considered freaks, and many would think they were creepy. Making a note of being careful of this happening to him, Vandali returned the forbidden tome to its shelf. It would take Vandali a long time to realize that the soul of a foolish evil god had essentially thrown himself into his stomach, granting him the evil god's mana and a part of his power. But not as long as it would take the Mage's Guild branch of Niyaki to notice that the forbidden tome had turned into an ordinary bundle of paper. Skill explanation: grotesque mind, a skill that represents having a different mental structure from normal people. Spells, special abilities and drugs that affect the mind are completely ineffective against those who possess this skill. But this skill doesn't mean that the person possessing it is emotionless. Among people, Vandali is the only one to possess this unique skill. A portion of beings that came from other worlds, such as evil gods, as well as those extraordinarily similar to them, also possess this skill. Mental encroachment, a skill that allows the user to affect the mind and alter the personality, perceptions and memories of the target. In order to use it, some kind of communication, such as direct contact, conversation or eye contact, is required. Using this skill through indirect methods, such as having the target read a written letter or hear a recorded voice, is also possible. In Buberjuro's case, the condition for the skill's activation was the target reading the pages of the forbidden tome that was his body. Vandali is currently unable to use this skill against living people like Buberjuro, who could directly enter the target's mind and soul to conduct his brainwashing. However, he is able to exert tremendous effects on the dead. Body expansion, a skill that allows the user to stretch or shrink a part of the body or the entire body. The distance the body part can be stretched depends on the level. Level 1 in the skill allows extension to twice the original body part's length. Level 2 allows 4 times the original length and level 3 allows 8 times. Though the body parts can stretch and shrink, they do not gain rubber-like properties. There are no people who possess this skill. Chapter 75, Charge. The Local Criminal Syndicate. Naturally, criminal syndicates exist in the nations and cities of Lambda. Exchanging stolen goods, smuggling of contraband products such as drugs and cursed items, illegal slave trading, contracts for murder. They are far more villainous than the thieves' guilds that appear in the fantasy works of Earth, and there are those that could never be called a necessary evil. Such a criminal syndicate existed in the city of Niyaki as well. An organization with several dozen members, the Fangs of Dark Knights. It was a criminal syndicate that had recently taken advantage of the economic slump in the Hartna Duchy to profit through slave trading and dealing drugs. Its leader was a feared man, known as Tornir Zagi. When he was young, he had been subjected to torture by an opposing organization, during which his ears had been torn to pieces, but he hadn't let out a single scream. Zagi was currently glaring at a beautiful woman with red hair and red eyes. "You beach, what are you after?" He had been forced to sit on a sofa inside his base, which was filled with the lingering scent of blood. In front of him was a white-haired child sitting on the opposite sofa and the beautiful woman standing beside him. Zagi's nearby henchmen were either lying on the floor bleeding or cowering and trembling in the corners of the room along with the women who poured his drinks. "What I'm after is," the child began. "I'm not asking you." "Shut the hell up, you shetty brat," said Zagi, interrupting him, still talking with the tone of an important person. "Oi, Nei-chan, I don't know what kind of joke this is supposed to be, but if you thought you could trick me into thinking that this kid is your master, you've failed. There's no way that a woman who could dispose of my men in the blink of an eye would be serving a brat like this." The beautiful, red-haired woman grabbed Zagi's collar and raised him into the air with one hand. "I'm being lifted up by a woman's thin arm." In the next moment, the woman who had lifted the astonished Zagi into the air slammed his back into the floor. Gah! The floor made a noise of destruction. Zagi was winded from the impact and began writhing in pain on the ground. The woman added a kick to his abdomen. Zagi gave a scream, as if the precious little air in his lungs had been squeezed out. As the woman moved to deliver yet another attack, she was stopped. "Eleonora, calm down," said the child. "But Vandali-sama, such inferior creatures who dare speak careless remarks about you do not have the right to breathe," the woman protested. "He must be tormented and killed as soon as possible." "Your words are contradicting themselves," the child pointed out. "It would be problematic if he dies, so let's calm down." "Yes." The woman turned back to Zagi. You should be grateful for Vandali-sama's kindness, human. Ah, it's not good to use the word human like that, said the child. Me, Eleonora, Zran, we're all humans, after all. Everyone is human, you know. That's right. Everyone is human, everyone is human. The woman turned to Zagi again. Be grateful, you scum. Yes, like that, said the child. From the conversation between the two individuals who were holding hands somewhere over his head, Zagi, who was still unable to breathe, realized that the child really was the superior one in their relationship. And on the inside, he felt relief for the fact that the child seemed to have no intention of killing him. Considering the ability that Eleonora had demonstrated a moment ago, Zagi knew that even the members and bodyguards of the Fangs of Dark Knights who weren't present wouldn't be able to cross swords with her. In fact, within his field of vision, he could see the organization's most competent bodyguard, a former class adventurer, defeated with a sword piercing his stomach. Now that it comes to this, I have no choice but to bide time until the master comes. Zagi's only hope was for the true master of Niaki's underworld, the one who supported the organization, to come running to the scene of this bizarre occurrence. Zagi could feel the presence of the master's familiar, so he firmly believed that the master would come to this place. The question was whether that would be while Zagi was still alive or after he had already died. So what is your objective? He asked the child. Did someone pay you to do this? Or do you want drugs? Surely you're not going to tell me that this is someone's plan for vengeance. It's the last option, vengeance, the child replied. I'm just acting as an agent, though. Though Zagi's heart almost fell upon hearing that this really was an act of vengeance, he smiled to himself, realizing there was a chance if the child was an agent. Those after revenge often have a broken sense of benefits and losses. An avenger who would stumble over money and women wouldn't have done things to this extent against the boss of a criminal syndicate. However, if he was merely an agent of revenge, then it was a different story. Then what did you ask for? If it's money, I'll pay as much as you want. Won't you turn to our side? Zagi asked. No, I intend to take all of your money after I kill you, said Vandali. What? Wait a second, didn't you say that your objective was vengeance? That's right. And I'm planning to take your money and organization while I'm at it. The way Vandali spoke these words with such a casual tone caused Zagi to shudder. And if what Vandali said was true, the fact that Zagi would be killed had already been decided. Zagi couldn't understand this at all. Wait, whose vengeance did you come for? He asked, now desperate. Hasn't there been some kind of misunderstanding? I'm definitely a bad person, but I don't kill people without reason. I have no other choice but to do it to survive. Plenty of the people I killed were real scoundrels, too. In the underworld, there's a thing called the underworld's virtues. If those words are lies, you're going to see hell, you know? Said Vandali, though he was almost certain that Zagi's words were indeed lies. He had already heard various things from Zagi's recently deceased subordinates. And as for whose vengeance I came for, do you remember a bar by the name of Scarlet Dreams? What are you talking about? Zagi asked, bewildered. He had no recollection whatsoever of a bar named Scarlet Dreams. I've come for the vengeance of a woman who was deceived by a swindling, traveling bard who was singing at that bar 15 years ago, said Vandali. Huh? What the hell is that? Zagi shouted, eyes wide open in disbelief. 15 years ago? A swindler's prostitute? Why the hell have you come for such a worthless vengeance? How stupid do you, Jagger? Eleonora delivered yet another kick into the side of his body. Please refrain from making further careless remarks, scum, Eleonora warned him. As Zagi rolled on the floor, throwing up a mixture of blood and vomit, Vandali spoke once more. As for why, actually, this afternoon, something big was going to happen. Old Lady Milan, a spiritualist who had made a living in divination for a long time in the city of Niaki, had been certain of this since the previous night. It was a clear omen that anyone would notice if they had the basic powers granted by the spiritualist job that she possessed. So, you have come, she said, addressing the customer who had opened the door to her small store. Business has been terrible because of you. What do you mean? Asked Vandali, the white-haired child who had come through the door. The expression on old Lady Milan's wrinkled face changed as she laughed. Are you questioning how I knew that you would come? Or why business being terrible for me is your fault? You would know the answer to both of these if you gave it some careful thought, she told him. Now that every spirit in the city has been taken away, even the spirits of the mice and insects, what is a spiritualist like me supposed to do? And if you're taking such a large number of spirits around with you, it would be noticeable even from outside the city. The eyes of old Lady Milan, the eyes of a spiritualist, could see the countless spirits surrounding Vandali. Their numbers were far beyond the hundreds or thousands. They swarmed around him like insects. She was honestly unable to comprehend how the boy in front of her had managed to maintain his sanity. "Some of the spirits told me that you were knowledgeable regarding the past," said Vandali. "I suppose I am. I am an elf, so I really am as old as I look," said old Lady Milan, lowering her hood to reveal her long, pointed ears. "I'm not really trying to hide it. It's just that a mysterious old woman who has been here for decades attracts more customers than a simple old elf, you see. It seemed that the atmosphere and impressions left on the customers were important for fortune tellers, even in fantasy worlds. So, what did you want to ask me? I'm not an information broker, but if it's just stories from the past, I'll make it cheap for you," she said. Those with the spiritualist job are capable of a little fortune-telling, hearing the voices of the dead and seeing spirits. Other than being able to learn who committed a murder or hear from people of secret intelligence organizations who had been silenced in crude manners, it is nothing outstanding. This is because the memories and personalities of spirits become unstable over time. Their memories of everything other than fixations they had in life or people they hate collapse as if dissolving, eventually disappearing completely. This can happen in the space of anywhere between a few days to several decades. And even if they do possess the memories and personalities that they had in life, there is no guarantee that they will not lie. There have been tragic occurrences in the past where criminal investigations based on the words of spiritualists resulted in innocent people being executed. It is not uncommon for the victim to protect their murderer when the victim is the murderer's relative. But as old Lady Milan was an elf with a lifespan of 500 years, she remembered many things about the past herself, and she remembered stories told by spirits right after they died, even though they had died long ago. "Please tell me what happened to Princess Livia of Taylorsheim and those who were with her, around 200 years ago," said Vandali. "Why would you want to know about something like that?" Old Lady Milan asked. "Do you have some relationship with that nation of titans?" "No, I suppose I won't ask. I don't mind telling you, though," Vandali offered. "Never mind, those spirits around you are giving me frightening looks," said old Lady Milan. "Now then, I think this will be unpleasant to hear for you, but listen, and don't get angry. When the tunnel through the boundary mountain range was discovered 2 centuries and a few decades ago, the head of the Hartner family of dukes at the time was a war-obsessed, zealous believer of Veda. As Taylorsheim was a nation of titans that believed in Veda, he conducted trade with Taylorsheim in a proactive manner. This trade brought wealth to the Hartner Duchy, leading it to having a favorable reputation and people praising it for having outstanding economic policies despite having an image of being an unrefined duchy before that. However, the new head of the family after that was a zealous believer of Alda. He believed that the one who would bestow their divine protection in harsh battles was not Veda, who had been defeated, but Alda, the victor. Even so, there would have been no problems for Taylorsheim if the Duke was part of the peaceful faction, but he was actually a fundamentalist pretending to be part of the peaceful faction. But he was not simply a fanatic, and as ruler, he had the power of judgment. He maintained the trade with Taylorsheim for as long as it remained profitable, despite his unpleasant feelings about it. That was when the Mage Shield Nation's expedition to Taylorsheim happened. The head of the Hartner family utilized that expedition. When Taylorsheim sent requests for reinforcements, he made excuses, delayed his responses and left the Titans to die. When the first Princess Livia led 50 refugees to the Hartner Duchy, seeking aid, he tricked them into thinking that he would accept them. He had her bodyguards poisoned and had the princess executed after falsely accusing her of trying to kill him and instigate a coup d'état to take the Hartner Duchy for herself. He acquired the national treasures of Taylorsheim that the Titans had brought to ensure that they didn't fall into the hands of the Mage Shield Nation. Precious magic items such as a box that generated endless products. He sent the remaining Titans, which were only children and elderly individuals, to the slave-run mines as criminal slaves. He had the city of people who were knowledgeable about Taylorsheim, the city that was the contact point for the trade with Taylorsheim, abandoned. Since the trade was now impossible, it was unable to sustain itself as a trading city anymore, so this was convenient for him. As the tunnel had been sealed, there was no need to worry that the Mage Shield Nation would give pursuit, either. As a result, the Hartner Duchy acquired national treasures of Taylorsheim and a labor force of Titans equivalent to several hundred workers without losing a single soldier to the Mage Shield Nation. Considering the alternative of sending reinforcements to help fight the Mage Shield Nation and losing the battle, this was an extraordinary profit. But 200 years ago, Wasn't Taylorsheim supposed to be considered on the side of justice in the war between the Orborn Kingdom and the Amid Empire? Asked Vandali. If Old Lady Milan's story was true, there were some inconsistencies. At the very least, with her version of events, there would have been problems in considering Taylorsheim to be on the side of justice. But Old Lady Milan simply gave a shrug. I am simply a spiritualist, boy, she said. I only speak the words of the dead. Investigating and making conclusions is not my specialty, nor is it my job. But you are right, she paused. The only ones who know the truth would be the Duke's family and their close aides, as well as a very small number of the kingdom's rulers at the time. They likely tricked the world with a substitute for the princess. A short while after the war, they would have announced that she had died of illness. It is a method that even an old woman like myself could think of. There were fewer titans than humans, but there were quite a number of them living in the Orborn Kingdom. Though it would have taken some effort, it wouldn't have been particularly difficult to prepare a substitute. And though Princess Livia was known by everyone in Taylorsheim, the number of people who knew what her face looked like in the Orborn Kingdom was limited. The people would be informed of a magnificent war and where it was occurring, told that the pitiful refugees had been taken under protection. Everyone would be satisfied with this and not think to find out what was really happening. A few years later, the people would be tricked in the same way in regards to the princess's whereabouts. This was a conspiracy made possible if several influential people joined forces. So, are Taylorsheim's refugees still in the mines? Vandali asked. Old Lady Milan nodded. Most likely. Titans are sturdy, and though they are criminal slaves, they are actually more like illegal slaves, so they should be still being made to work without being allowed to live or be killed, she said. Perhaps not the elderly, but those who were children back then should be still alive, though probably not all of them. Apparently, it is something like a village of slaves managed by the army. It is something that I heard from one of the spirits near you. Vandali thought for a moment before asking another question. The titans that were Princess Livia's bodyguards, where were they buried? Let's see. It would be unusual indeed for a spirit that would know such classified information to wander into a city in a remote place like this, said Old Lady Milan. But there is an underground cemetery that would be ideal for burying such a dark history. There is a legend that one of the champions sealed away a part of the Demon King there. It is said that thanks to him, evil cannot escape that place, even now. Even now. Where is that? Vandali asked. Somewhere beneath the Duke's castle, Old Lady Milan replied. Be careful. Be careful? Vandali repeated. You're saying that as if you know that I'm going to go there. Old Lady Milan gave an exasperated sigh. As you can see, I have been in this business for a long time, she said. By looking at the spirits around you, I can see that you are struggling to contain your anger. Exactly as Old Lady Milan was pointing out, Vandali was on the verge of exploding in rage. The nearby spirits were trembling in fear of his wrath. If Old Lady Milan's story was true, how could he possibly remain calm? How could he not curse the events of the past? He even felt a murderous impulse to go outside and begin indiscriminately tearing apart every living thing that entered his sight. But Vandali's logical side persuaded him that that wouldn't make him happy, nor would there be any meaning to doing so. It was true that the people of the Hartner Duchy had abandoned the refugees of Taylorsheim who were exploited. Nobody, not even the old elf woman in front of him, had tried to advocate that they should be helped. But the Orborn Kingdom was a feudalistic nation as well. The average citizen wouldn't think of starting political movements. There was almost nobody left who knew about the circumstances of 200 years ago, anyway. There was no internet and no journalists in Lambda. There were few ways information could spread, and the methods people could use to travel were limited as well. And with regards to punishment, the mindset of Taylorsheim, the mindset of New Arza, Borkus, Zran and the other titans, was that the sins of the father are not the sins of the child. Vandali agreed with this as well. It would be wrong to punish the people who were currently alive for the sins committed in the events of 200 years ago. Indeed, at least for the sins of 200 years ago. Vandali exhaled. Another question. If someone were to attack the slave-run mine and all of the slaves were to disappear somewhere, someone would investigate? Can you sell me information on the people who would investigate such an incident? The thing that needed to be done right now was not accusations or retribution, but the freeing of the titans who had been turned into slaves. Vandali didn't care about the laws of this land. But he wouldn't merely free them. He had to appeal to them and have them come to Taylorsheim. He needed to gain power and support, attack with enough force to be considered excess and deceive Duke Hartner and those serving him into thinking that it was some kind of accident. No. I value my life more than a few coins, said old lady Milan. Out of concern, I will tell you that revenge is no, never mind. These words are nothing more than an unrealistic ideal. I learned that soon after I became able to see spirits, too. The idea that the dead don't wish for anything, or that they only want the living to be happy is nothing more than a terribly foolish delusion. There were spirits following this unrealistic ideal, but if those they hated while alive fell to ruin, they would laugh and feel truly happy from the bottom of their hearts. Old Lady Milan knew that such spirits existed. The idea of speaking of this unrealistic ideal, to Vandali of all people, was laughable. I'm leaving the city tomorrow. Is there any kind of reward that you want? Vandali asked, as if nothing had happened. He had managed to suppress his anger. Payment for the information? Despite the appearance of my store, I do have savings, said old lady Milan. I have plenty to retire and live out the rest of my years, but let's see, can I ask one favor of you? As long as all of the spirits in the city were following Vandali, her business as a spiritualist was doomed. As such, old lady Milan had intended to close her store for a while. She had even considered moving to another city, depending on how things went. That was why she decided to voice the one regret that remained in the corner of her memories. Actually, you know, this was about 15 years ago. One of my customers got involved with a bard who was singing at a bar called Scarlet Dreams. I told her that he was a swindler and warned her to give up on him, and she said that she would break up with him. But, 3 days later, the woman's spirit apparently came back with a sad expression, and disappeared soon after. The old lady told me that she wanted to know the truth about this woman. And then I heard from a reliable source that you're the one responsible, Vandali explained. Zagi's body couldn't stop sweating in terror. In other words, this brat that I don't know anything about is about to do something crazy in this duchy. And he just decided to kill us all while he's at it? No, quite a lot of you are alive, said Vandali. Other than your bodyguards, only a few people were killed. The others are bleeding a little, but their hearts are still beating. Did this guy just read my mind? Zagi was too astonished to speak, but actually, the spirit of one of his bodyguards had cheerfully told Vandali, he's probably thinking something like that. What an idiot, right? So, do you remember her? Vandali asked. Though Zagi didn't respond, he did indeed have some idea of what Vandali was referring to. To be more specific, he had remembered while Vandali was talking. It was 15 years ago, when Zagi was at the bottom of the organization. Back then, he had already been blessed with villainous qualities, skill in committing crimes and good luck. Even the boss of the organization at the time remembered him. One of the jobs that he had been entrusted with was punishing a traveling bard who had been cheating people out of their money without making any offerings to the organization. However, Zagi allowed the swindler to make a narrow escape. In order to cover up his failure, he kidnapped the woman that the swindler had marked as his target, killed her in an unimaginably gruesome way and dumped her corpse in the room that the swindler had been using. He killed the woman and made it appear as if the swindler had fled in fear. He bribed his companions as well. He took the money of the woman that the swindler had failed to escape with, gave it to the boss and told him that it was the money that the swindler had offered in apology. That was supposed to be the end of this incident. If I tell the truth here, I'll be killed. Damn it, as if I'm going to die because of that woman that nobody gives a shit about. I don't know, it was someone else, probably the dead bodyguard over there, said Zagi. He was a crazy bastard who loved killing women, you know? He's lying. I killed about 5 people, but they were all men, shouted the bodyguard's spirit. Though Zagi was making various efforts in order to survive, there were futile and rather humorous attempts for Vandali, who could see spirits. Damn it, isn't the master here yet? Ah! The door was opened from the outside with a bang. A man with red eyes and white skin entered, along with a titan with his face hidden by a black mask and several small-looking people. Master. Thank you for coming. The male vampire leading the group was a spy who had been stationed here by the pure-breed vampires who worshipped Hukaka, the evil god of joyful life. He was the one who had been supporting Zagi. By becoming this vampire's hound, Zagi had been able to act like an important figure in the underworld of this city of 10,000, without any other organizations rising to power. Zagi had never seen the Titan or the small men following the vampire before, but he assumed that they were probably his subordinate vampires. Now then, Master, kill this shitty brat and his beach. I'll definitely repay the favor, shouted Zagi. Zagi, you are a loyal man who served me well. I valued you highly. The vampire stepped towards Zagi, as if responding to his request. But then, he walked straight past Vandali and Eleonora and looked down at Zagi. You, censored, mongrel, he roared. Don't you dare speak badly of these people. He drove the hard sole of his boot into Zagi's chest. Gwa. Zagi screamed as he heard his ribs cracking. Master, what are you? Suddenly, he noticed that the clothes of the man he called Master were stained dark red. I still have plans for him, so leave it at that, Vandali instructed. Yes, Kosugen-sama. The vampire lowered his head respectfully towards Vandali and kissed his feet. Seeing this, Zagi understood everything now. The reliable source that Vandali had mentioned earlier was this undead vampire. Zagi's last hope had been disposed of even before the attack on his organization had begun. This can't be happening just because I killed that woman that nobody cares about, the kind of woman you could find anywhere. My organization is I'm with his hope extinguished. Zagi began whispering to himself with a face looking more like a dead man's than that of an actual dead man. Vandali gave him a perplexed look. Just like how she was the kind of woman that you could find anywhere, someone you didn't really mind killing. You're the kind of villain that I could find anywhere, and I don't really mind killing you, he told Zagi. Isn't that just how it is? And so, Zagi, the boss of the Fangs of Dark Knights, died. The next day, however, he was found in perfect health, still giving orders to his subordinates. Zagi, whose personality had become strangely cheerful, began ruling the underworld much more reliably than he had before. It would be some time before a certain adventurer's actions revealed that he was, in fact, an undead king. I finally got a lover, Brago announced. When did that happen? Chapter 76, To Adventurers at the Adventurers Guild. After being betrayed by her stepfather and sold to a slave trader, Marie was stricken by despair. Marie's real father had died while she was young and her mother had remarried before dying of disease. Deciding that he couldn't raise a daughter that he wasn't related to, he ignored Marie's mother's final wish and sold Marie. Betrayed by someone she had loved like her real father, Marie gave up hope in living. A girl in her early teenage years like her wouldn't be purchased by a brothel unless she had been blessed with exceptional looks. It was common for such girls to be bought at cheap prices and worked to death performing harsh manual labor in a mine. Nobody could blame Marie for falling into despair. Fufu, what a beautiful bride. Please tell me your name. That was why she actually felt relieved to learn that she had been given to a vampire as payment, thinking that it would all be over soon. Even if by some miracle she was blessed enough to be purchased by a good buyer and set free one day, she no longer had a family that cared about her. Living out her remaining decades in such sadness would bring her nothing but pain. So, you are unable to speak, it matters not. I will soon be able to taste everything with these fangs and this tongue. As the vampire's fangs were revealed, his well-featured face twisted into a beast-like expression. As those fangs closed in on Marie's neck, the window, which contained glass unlike most other windows in the city of Nioki other than the windows of the Lord's house, shattered and glass scattered across the floor. What? Gwa. Black shadows flashed past his back and his sides, each of them causing a spray of blood to erupt from his body. Marie simply stared blankly at this unbelievable sight. The being in front of her was a vampire, an embodiment of evil that was supposed to be defeated by champions or heroes. Someone was tearing such a being into pieces in a one-sided fashion. Damn you, you coward. The vampire cursed. Wounds like this will soon. They won't heal, said a voice. These are kunai that apply the Holy Sun's healing negation. There's also deadly poison on them that works on vampires, said another. What? That can't be Gobu. With blood spraying from his mouth as if he were a fountain, the vampire stopped moving. The vampire that was supposed to grant Maria an end to her life had perished. His corpse had even been carried away by a masked titan. Vaguely wondering what would happen to her now, Marie was overwhelmed with fear. Instinctively, she picked up a sharp fragment of glass. Wait. Before Marie could bring the piece of glass to her throat, the smaller assassin had grabbed her arm. Why are you stopping me? She demanded. I'm begging you, please let me die. No, said the assassin. It would be problematic if you were to die. Why? She asked. You can find people who can replace me if you look just about anywhere. There's nobody who could replace you, said the assassin, with a forceful tone to his voice. Marie instinctively let the strength flow out of her arm. Braga used this opportunity to seize the piece of glass and throw it aside. And then he began to treat Marie's hand that had been cut by the glass. "Everyone cares about you," he told her. "Don't go and die so easily." Braga and the others had been asked by Vandali, their king, to protect as many of the vampire's victims and captives as possible. That was why they had been careful to protect victims like Marie and keep them safe. Braga wasn't lying. But in this moment, for the broken-hearted Marie, he was like a prince on a white horse. "So that's how it is, king. This is my lover, Marie," Braga announced. "Please give your blessings for our marriage." "You really never know where you're going to meet the one," Vandali thought as he looked at the proud-looking Braga and the girl standing next to him, who looked to be around 12 or 13 years old. "I don't really mind giving my blessings, but Braga is a black goblin. Are you alright with that?" Vandali asked. Black goblins were far more human-like in appearance than regular goblins, and they had good personalities like Braga's. Though Vandali could understand being friends, he had to wonder, wasn't there still a barrier that would make most normal people hesitate to choose a black goblin as their spouse? "Of course," Marie replied, despite Vandali's doubts. "The only one who cared about me is my mother, who passed away. I'm sure it's destiny that Braga and the others saved me from being killed by that vampire." I see," said Vandali. "You won't be able to come back to this country for at least 10 more years. Do you still feel that way?" "I don't mind. Then I don't have anything to do other than give you my blessings and say, congratulations." If Marie herself was satisfied, then it was probably fine. In fact, Braga, the vice-captain of the ninja unit, was the most successful of the black goblins and a fine individual. There was nothing to object to. And Marie would probably be able to live a more luxurious lifestyle if she came to Talersheim. "Ah, Holy Sun." About the prostitutes that the scoundrels held captive and the women working for them, Zran began. For some reason, his words were rather inarticulate. As Vandali turned to look at him, it was clear even through his mask that he was feeling troubled. "What is it?" Vandali asked. "I'm planning to use the mental encroachment skill to keep them quiet, give them some money and then release them." He only planned to use the fangs of dark nights that he had taken over for a few months at most, so he had no intention of continuing the management of their businesses like their brothels. He was intending to pull out right away, so he was planning to dispose of the wicked female management pretending to be prostitutes and silence the rest before releasing them. "About that," said Zran. "After seeing Marie Joutjen, they seem to have misunderstood and are under the impression that they won't be killed if they suck up to us. They're having a mass marriage interview over there with the black goblins. Wow. And none of them are used to women, so things have turned out quite interesting. Women are sturdy, aren't they? So, Vandali-sama, what will we do with those women?" Eleonora asked. "Indeed, what should Vandali do with them?" "First of all, let's conduct interviews and physical examinations," he said. "Honey, you have to tell him about me as well," said a woman. "Ah, that's right. King, I have a lover, too," said another black goblin. "Congratulations," said Vandali. Around the same time, those who had conspired to destroy the cultivation project led by the next lord of the Hartner Duchy, the second son Belton, had gathered to report the situation. "So, you mean to tell me that our plans have come to nothing because of this damper boy?" "Precisely, Karkan Dono." Karkan, a knight of the Hartner family's eldest son, Lucas, seemed to doubt the report of Froto, the man who had been disguising himself as a priest of Alder. "That is what you say, but no, I do not mean to say that I distrust you people. But still, it is a little." Nobody could blame Karkan for stroking his goatee with a suspicious look in his eyes. The contents of the report of Froto and his companions were simply too bizarre. A damper had flown through the sky towards the 5th cultivation village to save all of the villagers from the poison that had been distributed there. In addition to appearing from the sky bare-handed to defeat a group of orcs attacking the village, he created a well in the blink of an eye, providing an abundant source of water to the village that had been suffering from a water shortage. Karkan himself had ordered the knights under his command to deliver poisoned fertilizer to the 2nd cultivation village. It was supposed to become a ghost town by next spring. But apparently the damper had come and taught the villagers how to use goblins as emergency rations. And Froto claimed that there was no doubt that the damper was involved in the fact that the bandits dispatched by the spies in the city had gone missing. Karkan's men were reporting that all of this was done by a single damp boy. It wasn't unreasonable for Karkan to think that all of this was suspicious. At the very least, Karkan Dono, I saw the incident with the orcs myself. With these very eyes, I saw the orcs I sent being defeated by the damper in an instant," said the man who had tamed the orcs. He was a beast mage, a job that allowed the creation of mental bonds with monsters through magic in order to control them. Considering his words in addition to Froto's, it was difficult to believe that these reports were lies. And to counteract the poison that I distributed, that poison takes time to kill its victims, as it is designed to look like a disease, but it cannot be counteracted by normal anti-poison spells or antidote potions. That damp's skill is not superficial by any means, said a young man, the spy who had used makeup to disguise himself as a middle-aged traveling merchant. The men's words were too unnatural to assume that they were simply making excuses for failing in their work. Thus, Karkan decided to take their reports as truth. He was in charge of an entire order of knights. He had seen with his own eyes that there were men who could achieve unbelievable things despite their age and appearance if they served as knights for long enough. That child was a damper, was he? As difficult as it is to believe, if he is indeed a damper, it is a feasible story, said Karkan. But in other words, it simply means that there was a capable healing mage with the strength of a D-class adventurer in those villages, he concluded. The fact that the damper had defeated 3 orcs was impressive, but he had essentially defeated one with a surprise attack and used his momentum to defeat the other 2. This would likely be possible for anyone with the strength of a D-class adventurer. Most importantly, he is not using the village as a base for activity like the refugee adventurers. You said that he was simply passing by towards the city to become an adventurer, didn't you? In other words, it simply means that we must get things done while that child is not in the villages, said Karkan. Will that really be alright? Froto asked. Karkan laughed. You worry too much. Even that damper wouldn't do something like setting up guards to watch over the villages, he said. I suppose you are right. In reality, Vandali had stationed his familiars, lemures, as well as dozens of stone in each cultivation village. If that damp child is intending to become an adventurer, he should be forced to attend the adventurer's school for at least a year, said Karkan. During that time, we will pretend to be bandits and destroy the cultivation villages. I will lead the men myself. The men stirred at Karkan's announcement that he and his men would act as bandits. Is that really all right? If it were to be discovered, even if our victims are mere refugees, we will be hanged or turned into slaves. We must be willing to take at least this much risk, said Karkan. Everything is for the sake of exterminating these shamelessly disgraceful fools from the Sauron Duchy who are eating away at Ihartna Duchy like parasites, for the sake of the people and for the sake of Lord Lucas. As Vandali had thought, Karkan didn't acknowledge the refugees who had escaped the Sauron Duchy, including those living in the cultivation villages, as people of his own nation. The people that he referred to were the people of the Hartna Duchy. Those from other duchies such as the Sauron Duchy were essentially foreigners. With that said, Karkan's true motive was that he was impatient because he hadn't achieved anything meaningful in Lucas's name, so even if Lucas did succeed the family, Karkan wouldn't achieve the social status he wanted. My company is due to go on an expedition next month, said Karkan. At that time, we will start with the 7th cultivation village and then go on to attack the rest of the cultivation villages. Froto Dono, I will have you join us as well. Me? To ensure that we do not leave anyone alive, we need you, Froto Dono, as you know your way around the villages from pretending to preach to them. If this succeeds, you will become a vassal of the Duke's house, too. I'm counting on you. Of course. Despite the ominous feeling that he got from becoming involved in a deeper conspiracy than he had counted on, Froto couldn't turn back now. Vandali, who had inadvertently put a stop to all of Karkan's plans, was passing through the marketplace and heading towards the Adventurers Guild. His objective was, of course, to register as an adventurer. Things have changed after I learned various things, but now is the perfect opportunity to register. Now that it was clear that the Hartna Duchy had betrayed Talersheim, Vandali had a new objective of rescuing the Titan slaves from the slave-run mines, where they were still being exploited. He had already contacted Talersheim regarding this. Balkus was apparently so furious that he wanted to invade the duchy right this moment. How reliable he was. The reason Vandali was still registering as an adventurer despite this was because if he let this chance pass him by now, the next opportunity to do so might be years away. Vandali had also disposed of the vampire that had been stationed here by the pure-breed vampires worshipping the evil god of joyful life, turning him into an ally. Even the criminal syndicate controlling the city of Niaki had become his puppet. I'll quickly register, leave the city right away, regroup with Eleonora and the others, wait for night to fall and then fly towards the duchy's capital. Either way, Vandali needed to wait for nightfall before flying, so there was no problem with this. It would be problematic if he had a cliched encounter with delinquent adventurers, though. Still, it's good that I learned that there are a lot of things I need to work as an adventurer. To think that I'd at least need a house. Normally, adventurers wouldn't need a house to work as an adventurer. New adventurers used cheap lodging houses, while many veteran adventurers used inns that they were familiar with as their bases. However, Vandali had circumstances unlike those of other adventurers in that he had Borkus, Zadyrus, Sam and Eleonora to worry about. They wouldn't be treated as people. They were monsters that Vandali had tamed. As such, Vandali couldn't use an inn. It was similar to restaurants and boarding houses on Earth that didn't allow their customers to bring pets. And in this case, they weren't pets, but monsters that were feared more than wild beasts. If they were small monsters like pixies, there probably wouldn't be any problems, and for those like Eleonora and Zadyrus who looked like normal people at first glance, things might work out at certain inns. But it would certainly be impossible for Notchen and Bone Man. Of course, there were adventurers who were tamers, but when they used inns, they left their monsters in barns. Whether they were goblins, kobolds or even ghouls, they would have to stay in barns. Because of this, if Vandali wanted to use an inn, Borkus, Bone Man, and even Eleonora and the ghouls if they weren't allowed to use a guest room, would have to be treated like horses and kept in a barn. Truly savage behavior. Though after realizing this last night, Eleonora had prepared herself for this, thinking, to humiliate myself in such a way before anyone other than Vandali-sama, but if it is for Vandali-sama's sake. In order to work as an adventurer, I need to attend the adventurer's school. But even before that, I need to take money from bandits and criminal organizations, gather treasures from dungeons and buy a big house, said Vandali. Isn't it normally the other way around? It was strange to think that in order to become an adventurer and make achievements for himself, he needed to become rich and acquire a house. But if he worked alone, he couldn't acquire experience points due to his curse, and he wouldn't be able to endure loneliness. On top of that, he had no confidence that he would be able to gain companions to form a party at the adventurer's school. A house was necessary after all. Even if I do use money to buy a house, I can't walk around cities publicly with everyone unless I receive collars and necklaces that prove that I've tamed them. Becoming an adventurer is so troublesome, Vandali thought aloud as he passed a deserted Church of Vida and arrived at the Adventurers Guild building. It was a two-story building built in an area so large that the branch in the 7th cultivation village, the entire jack-of-all-trades store, could fit inside it dozens of times over. Excluding the buildings of the region's lord, it was among the 5 largest buildings in the city of Niaki. The buildings for guild branches in cities really are big. Even Vandali, who normally lived in the royal castle of Taylorsheim, was impressed. He gave a short prayer, hoping that he wouldn't get into a fight with some delinquent adventurer. Let's go. He gathered his resolve and opened the door to the guild. The time of day where the guild would be packed with adventurers looking for requests to accept had passed, so there were few adventurers present. There were receptionists sitting at the reception counter, and behind them, there were other employees doing paperwork. Vandali proceeded silently and managed to reach the counter, without getting into any fights. It seems my prayer has been heard, Vandali thought, but he was mistaken. It was simply that most of the adventurers hadn't even noticed him, and even if they did notice him, there weren't many who would pick a fight with a child like him. Most children who come to the Adventurers Guild are either newbies coming to register, G-class adventurers or students of the Adventurers School. And if someone were to say, "You think a brat like you can be an adventurer?" and pick a fight with a G-class adventurer who did work like manual labor in the city and cleaning the guild, they would receive only scornful laughter. Things would only be more tragic for them if they were to pick a fight with a student enrolled at the Adventurers School. Positions as instructors at the Adventurers School are popular for adventurers who have retired from the front lines. If people pick fights for no reason and try to threaten others, they would only anger their seniors and make it harder for themselves to be re-employed in the future. So, the cliché scenario of the boorish senior adventurer who picks fights with newbies only occurs when new adventurers graduate the Adventurers School and begin their real adventures. Alternatively, it is often the child who starts the fight. There are indeed people in all lines of work who are so hopelessly low that common sense is lost on them, but they wouldn't be present in every guild branch at every hour of the day. Perhaps in the sense that there were no such people currently in the Niaki branch of the guild, Vandali's prayer had indeed been heard. "Excuse me," said Vandali, calling out to a receptionist. "I want to register as an adventurer." Yes. It seemed that the receptionist hadn't noticed him, She looked surprised for a moment before quickly giving him a businesslike smile and handing him a pen and a paper form. Please fill out your name, age, race and specialties if you have any. Do you need someone to fill it out on your behalf? She asked. No, it's not a problem. Not a problem, said Vandali. But what kind of things should I write under specialties? He had heard about the application process for the Adventurers Guild of 200 years ago from Borkus and the process in the Mage Shield Nation from Kuka, but things were different in different time periods and different nations. It was best to make sure he was filling out the form correctly. For specialties, you should write things like any training you have received from former adventurers, affinity for attributes, your qualities and any unique skills you possess, said the receptionist. Even my unique skills. Don't you find out my skills when you issue my guild card? Vandali asked. Yes, that is correct, but your skills that are revealed when you register are kept confidential, so they will only be known to the staff member in charge of your registration. When you write your unique skill in the specialties field of the form, it is a declaration of your intent to make that unique skill public and make use of it in competing requests, the receptionist explained. For example, if an adventurer possessed a unique skill that granted the ability to deal extra damage against certain species of monsters, such as Goblin Slayer or Dragon Slayer, the guild would set up requests suitable for that skill and introduce appropriate clients to that adventurer. But if the adventurer wanted to keep the skill a secret, it would basically be sealed within the mind of the staff member. It seems like there would be exceptions, though, like they would actually tell the guild master, or something like that. The Adventurers Guild was run by people after all, so it was probably best not to rely too much on their confidentiality policy. In fact, though Vandali was unaware of this, a guild master of the Adventurers Guild in the Mage Shield Nation had fraudulently promoted the Green Wind Spear Riley at Earl Thomas Palpapek's demand. Of course, there were some guild masters who managed their branches in a wholesome manner, but there were also those who did not. In that case, I can just leave the specialties field blank. Vandali would dash out of the city after registering. He submitted the form after filling in only the fields for his name, race and age. This is for some reason. The receptionist opened her eyes wide as she took the form and then gave Vandali a pitiful look. According to what you have written in this form, you are a 7-year-old damp. Is that correct, Vandali-san? Even if Vandali tried to deceive her, his real name, age and race would be revealed once his guild card was issued. So, of course, he had filled in the form with complete honesty. Yes, that's right, he told the receptionist. I suppose dampers are air after all, Vandali thought as he removed the cloth concealing one of his eyes, showing her that he really was a damp. Then I'm afraid you cannot register, the receptionist said with a grave expression as she saw his crimson and purple odd-colored eyes. Vandali blinked a few times, bewildered by this unbelievable response. But the receptionist's expression didn't change, nor did she correct her statement. Why is that? He asked. I thought that those under the age of 10 registering to become adventurers just need to take a simple test. If the examination was passed, if the applicant was able to demonstrate that they possessed the intelligence and decision-making ability equivalent to that of a 10-year-old child, they would be registered as a G-class adventurer. As for whether they could become F-class or higher, just like other underage adventurers, it would be decided after they graduated from the adventurers' school. At least, that was how it was supposed to be, but under the joint signature of Lord Belton and the Guild Master of the Guild headquarters of the Hartner Duchy, the rules have been changed. Children under the age of 10 who have mixed blood, including blood of Vedas races that originate from monsters such as Lamias and centaurs, do not have the right to sit the examination, the receptionist told him. Of course, this includes dampers. The system had changed so that Vandali couldn't register as an adventurer in the Hartner Duchy until he reached the age of 10, where he would be able to attend the adventurer's school, another 3 years or so. Kasim and his friends hadn't mentioned it, but they hadn't intentionally kept it from Vandali. They were all humans. The only ones affected by this system change were beast people, titans, dark elves and people of mixed blood of those races. Beings like vampires or lamias were considered to be monsters. Children born between humans and such beings with their human features being more prominent than their monster ones were a minority. Kasim and his friends couldn't be blamed for not remembering the change. And now that he thought about it, Vandali realized that he had never told them that he was 7 years old. Because he had decapitated a goblin barbarian and used advanced life attribute magic, or at least, Kasim and the others believed this, To heal Ivan, it wouldn't be surprising if they had assumed that Vandali was older than he looked. I see. Yes. And rumor has it that the rules will change again this year so that such individuals will not have the right to enroll at the adventurers' school. The receptionist wore a regretful expression as her words trailed off. If what she said came to pass, Vandali wouldn't be able to become an adventurer for another 8 years, never mind 3. I see, said Vandali, trying to suppress his shock in order to think. It was unpleasant that Lord Belton and the Guildmaster had made a change to the system and rules that seemed to target him specifically. Including the way that Taylorshire and the Titans had been betrayed. Vandali would never forget this. But there would be no meaning in protesting here. It was best that Vandali give up and leave the city. And once he dealt with the matters at hand, he would simply need to look for an opportunity to register as an adventurer in another duchy. He wouldn't wait 8 years. It would be fine to register next year or the year after. Normally, it would be difficult for a child living in this world to go to another duchy, which was essentially another country, even if that child was in a trading city near a border between duchies. But Vandali would be able to do so easily by flying through the sky. This wasn't a large problem. Yes, it was unpleasant, but it wasn't a large problem. But someone behind Vandali raised his voice. Hang on a second, will you? The receptionist in front of Vandali and even the other employees and adventurers started to stir in commotion as their attention was drawn to the voice's owner. Vandali opened his eyes wide without turning around. He had heard this voice somewhere before. Chapter 77, Abandoning the Duchy, Unable to Forgive the Enemy. Hang on a second, will you? Said the adventurer, casually approaching the reception counter that Vandali had frozen stiff in front of. It's the first time I've heard of this rule change. Can you explain what you mean? You're troubling me. I'm currently dealing with this child, the receptionist began. I have something I want to say about how you're dealing with him. Can you call the guildmaster for me? Said the adventurer. You're troubling me, the receptionist repeated. If you want to make an appeal to the guild, then, when it is your turn, please tell one of us staff members at the reception counters first. I am the A-class adventurer Hines. I'd like to request a face-to-face meeting with the guildmaster once more, under the authority of an A-class adventurer. Hines. It was Hines. Vandali turned his head as if it was on a creaking hinge, looking at the adventurer standing next to him. He was a well-featured, strong-willed young man with blonde hair and blue eyes. He was in his early to mid-20s. It was clear from one look at his appearance and equipment that he wasn't an ordinary person. Though it had changed a little, he had the same voice that Vandali had heard in of Bigia, and he matched the physical description given by Riley. Mum's enemy, the blue-flamed sword Hines. He was one of the people whom Vandali absolutely needed to kill. Vandali had heard that Hines had crossed over to the Orborn Kingdom, but he hadn't imagined that Hines would be staying in the Hartner Duchy, nor had he imagined that he would encounter him at this moment. The resurrection of Darsa was something that was absolutely needed for Vandali's pursuit of happiness. And those who interfered with it needed to be eliminated. That was why he would kill Hines. Selling his mother to a fanatic worshipper of Algar had simply been another request for Hines. It didn't matter if his actions were completely normal and legal in that nation. It didn't matter what Hines was thinking and doing now. The problem was the future, what lay ahead. He had sold Darsa to a religious fanatic once. What reason did Vandali have to believe that he wouldn't do the same again? If he had already changed his viewpoint once, who was to say that he wouldn't change it again? In order to reduce those possibilities to zero, Hines needed to be killed and destroyed. Now was a good opportunity to do that. Of course, Vandali couldn't do anything flashy in a place like this where people were watching. He knew that. He could simply poison him or infect him with a disease. Should he turn his breath, a small amount of his saliva or the substances secreted by his skin into poison? Should he accidentally touch Hines and infect him with pathogens? Vandali started coming up with these plans, but every time he thought about them, he heard the warnings of danger sense, death in his head. If he tried to poison Hines, he would be killed. If he tried to infect Hines with pathogens, he would be killed. Either way, the one who would die was not Hines, but Vandali. Impossible. Is this guy invincible or immortal or something? He was far too different compared to when he had worked for High Priest Gordon. Vandali was astonished at this change, but he couldn't deny the reality in front of him or the death attribute magic spell that had saved him up until now. I see, this is an A-class adventurer worthy of becoming S-class like Mikhail, the one who was powerful enough to slay Borkus and the others in an instant. Someone who would defeat A-class adventurers, who were supposed to be superhumans, with ease. A superhuman that transcended superhumans. Heinz was far too different from Riley, whose soul had been broken by Vandally after his defeat at Balkus's hands. And it was even said that Heinz was far more blessed when it came to allies than Riley had ever been. Vandally moved his eyes and looked far past Heinz to see that there were 5 more people standing there. 2 of them matched the descriptions that he had heard from Riley. The female dwarf shield-bearer with blue hair, Deliza. The male scout with black hair and black eyes, Edgar. The other 2 were perhaps new party members, a female elf with a mace and priest's garb, and a young woman who appeared to be an unarmed fighter. Heinz wouldn't have chosen them just for their looks, so they were probably A-class and B-class as well, class at worst. This must be the new 5-colored blades with 2 new members taking the place of Riley and the female elf spiritual mage who apparently perished in a dungeon. The 5th additional member, a girl of Vandally's age or even younger who was half hiding behind Deliza, was probably not a party member. Was she someone's younger sister? Ah, how troublesome. They're the worst kinds of enemies for me. Even excluding the girl, he could tell by looking at the other 4. It was because of these people that Vandally didn't even have a fraction of a percent of a chance of killing Heinz. They were watching Heinz with wry smiles and exasperated expressions, muttering words like, "Good grief, and here we go again." But if anything were to happen to Heinz, they would back him up with swift speed and precision. If Heinz were to fight Vandally with these party members with him, there was no doubt that he would utilize his ability to coordinate with them and deliver a blow capable of piercing Vandally's barriers. Poisoning them or infecting them with pathogens would be futile. Unlike the soldiers of the Mage Shield Nation's expedition army, they were equipped to deal with high-rank monsters that inflicted status effects with their attacks. They were different even from the self-conceited Riley. They were ridiculously strong. Their mana pools were irrelevant. If Vandally was an enormous elephant, they were ants capable of killing such an elephant. I have no choice. I have to endure this humiliation for now. I mustn't die. There are things I need to do. I'll be satisfied with being able to see these guys' faces directly. I'll regroup with Eleonora and the others, and what are these guys? What is Heinz doing? Vandally, who had even been using his high-speed thought-processing skill to immerse himself in his thoughts in an attempt to endure a feeling of powerlessness and humiliation that tormented his entire body, was suddenly startled as he began processing the information from his ears. Please wait, the guildmaster is currently out of his office, then a submaster should be here. The rules state that when the guildmaster is absent, one of the 2 submasters will always remain inside the guild. Or was that rule changed as well? Heinz was currently arguing not with the receptionist, but a male staff member who appeared to be her senior. But the situation was looking worse for the staff member. That is, I know that there's no point in saying this to you, said Heinz. The same goes for the guildmaster of the guild's Nyuki branch. But there's something I want the guildmaster to write. I want him to write a letter of introduction to meet the guildmaster of the Adventurers Guild headquarters of the Hartner Duchy. If our guildmaster writes something like that, doesn't that mean that he is endorsing you? Said the staff member. Heinz pressed the staff member further. So, he can't do it? Even though he can approve of such a meaningless rule change? This isn't something that can be decided by a mere staff member. The staff member protested. Any guild employee would know that this meaningless rule change is a non-committal decision made by Lord Belton in order to gain the support of the churches, including the Church of Elder, because he can't gain the support of the Duchy's army in his familial dispute, said Heinz. It's something that even I could figure out right away, after all. Apparently, many of the current important figures in the Hartner Duchy's Church of Elder were fundamentalists rather than members of the peaceful faction. Children with monster blood are dangerous, so they can't be judged through a single examination. They could lose their self-control at any moment, so letting them into the adventurer's school is also dangerous. Do you guys really believe these things? Heinz asked. The more Heinz spoke, the paler the male staff member's face grew and the more he struggled to maintain eye contact. It was likely that he secretly agreed with Heinz's words. It seemed that the same went for the other staff members and receptionists. The other adventurers present voiced their agreement. What's the problem? You just have to deliver a message. That's right, that's right. The doors of the Adventurers Guild are wide open, aren't they? You're not planning to keep us beast people out soon, are you? And then the male staff member seemed to come to a decision. I understand, he said. But the only thing I can do is pass the message on to the guild master. I know, said Heinz. That'll be enough. I will warn you as an A-class adventurer, you already possess more influence than a lower nobleman, the staff member told him. Your intentions will be known to the lords. But please do not forget that it is up to the lords as to how to interpret your intentions. I know that, too, said Heinz. Not as a member of Alga's peaceful faction, but as an adventurer, I believe that the guild shouldn't obey the will of politicians. That's all I wanted to say. The doors to adventure are open to members of all races. We shouldn't ignore the words of the founder, should we? I like those words too, said the staff member. Now then, I will send a messenger the guild master, so excuse me. You're lucky, aren't you? He said, smiling at Vandali. With the staff member's words, Vandali's brain finally started functioning again. Lucky? Why? Because he had been able to see how his enemy's appearance and a part of his power? No, that wasn't it. Could it be Heinz helping me? Impossible. As Vandali directed his gaze towards Heinz to see him giving Vandali a nod with a reassuring, reliable smile. As if to say, leave it to me. However, rather than being reassured, Vandali was going mad. Why do I have to be helped? Don't mess with me. Is it some kind of trap? There's another side to this. There's another side to this. There has to be. There's something fishy about this. It's strange. I'm not convinced. Feeling an unpleasant sensation that felt like his brain, spirit and even his soul were turning into mush, Vandali was unable to gather his thoughts. The parallel thought processing and high-speed thought processing skills served only to further increase his confusion. He couldn't calm down. Good grief. Who was it that said he's not interested in politics? The moment we finish our escort request and arrive in the city, this happens. And now you're planning to complain to the next duke and the guild master of the duchy's guild headquarters, said Heinz's male party member. But Edgar, he's been saying it all along, hasn't he? Said another. That Alga's teachings should be changed to be more peaceful. And even going as far as to split up with Riley to come to this country was Heinz's. I remember hearing that this party's objective was to completely clear the Wandering Dungeon. Zakart's trials, though, said a third-party member, a woman. Please don't say that, said yet another party member. Or do you mean to say that you think that Heinz's words are mistaken, Jennifer? That's not what I meant, said the woman called Jennifer. Vandali could hear Heinz's companions conversing as if these things couldn't be helped, though none of them showed any signs of opposing Heinz's words. Hey, is Heinz the one who belongs to Alga's peaceful faction? That's right. I heard that in the Mage Shield Nation, he witnessed the tragedy of a certain Damper and his mother, and that's why he came to this country. Huh. So that's why he's helping a Damp now. A-class adventurer summers really are something else. Vandali could hear the voices of other adventurers. In summary, Heinz and his companions changed their views when they saw Mom burned at the stake after they captured her and handed her over. Now they're part of Alga's peaceful faction and work in the Orborn Kingdom. So that's why they're helping a Damp. Helping. It's all right, said the little girl who was with Heinz's companions. She was right in front of Vandali, who, despite his inner thoughts, appeared to simply be standing there motionlessly. She took his hand as she continued speaking. Heinz Onichen is going to help you. Just like he helped me. She said, laughing. One of her eyes was a blood red color that didn't match her other eye. Ah, Vandali's hand trembled. Nausea, a headache and a sense of discomfort, the likes of which he had never experienced in his third lifetime, ran through his body. Kaya? The little girl cried in surprise. Unable to stand it anymore, Vandali had shaken her hand off. In doing so, he had kept his claws withdrawn and controlled his strength so that he didn't injure her. That was the limit of how much he could hold back. Hey, you? Startled, Heinz reached out towards Vandali. But Vandali put all of his effort into putting as much distance between himself and Heinz as possible. He used all four limbs to propel himself along the floor and used flight in a way that excessive force was exerted on his internal organs. Oi! Wait a second. What's wrong? Ignoring the surprised voices of Heinz's companions and other adventurers, Vandali used his shoulder to smash through the door to the guild and fled. Vandali was sitting on the ground, staring at his trembling hands. He was already outside the city of Niaki, probably inside a nearby forest or thicket. It was unlikely that he had traveled very far. He had no memory whatsoever of how he exited the city after leaving the guild. It was possible that he had created a hole in the outer wall to escape. Argo, Vandali's mind was in so much chaos that he didn't have time to worry about such things. He felt as if his entire body would rot away with the anger, humiliation and powerlessness that he felt. He had been completely unable to defeat his enemy. He knew without even challenging him that it would end in utter defeat. He had previously imagined that this would be the ultimate humiliation. But an even greater humiliation existed. Being pitied by his enemy, by Heinz. Vandali was almost helped by him. It was an action that trampled over Vandali's pride. But the thing that Vandali found most unforgivable was the reason that Heinz had tried to help him. Heinz had tried to help him because he was a damp. Heinz had changed his way of thinking and become part of Alga's peaceful faction after seeing Vandali's mother, whom he had captured and handed over to a fanatic as part of a request, tortured and burned alive in public. Don't, censored, with me. Logically, it made sense why things had turned out like that. Heinz was probably unaware that Vandali had survived. He was under the assumption that Vandali had died long ago. Vandali's existence was known only to very few, some individuals in the Mage Shield Nation and the Mid-Empire, as well as the pure-breed vampires. It wasn't strange to think that Heinz didn't know that he was alive. That was why he was atoning for his past deeds. It was a common story that could be found in both fiction and non-fiction books on Earth. In order to apologize to the people they had killed, they would live on and atone for their sins. They would save as many people as they had killed. Feeling guilt over the innocent civilians of enemy nations they had killed in war, they would spend the rest of their days atoning. It wasn't unusual or anything. The examples that Vandali remembered best were indeed from works of fiction. Someone's mistake would cause the death of another without it being punishable by law. Despite remaining free, the person would feel tormented over it, and then the protagonist of the drama or manga would tell that person, keep helping others until the day comes where you can forgive yourself. Protagonists would tell former villains, atone for your mistakes with your future deeds. Heinz was atoning for the wrongs he had done to Darsa and Vandali. He was putting the peaceful teachings he believed were correct into practice, and he had saved that little girl, the damp. Nobody had asked him to atone, and yet he was atoning in a way that was completely unrelated to Darsa and Vandali. Don't mess with me. So, was Vandali supposed to forgive him? Was he supposed to stop blaming him? Was he supposed to stop trying to kill him? It was out of the question. There was no way that Vandali would even consider accepting something so unreasonable. Imagine if there was a foreign serial killer who killed numerous people in a certain country and then saved a number of people in his own country equal to the number of people he had killed. If Vandali was supposed to forgive Heinz in this situation, then the bereaved families of the people killed by the serial killer would have to forgive him as well, wouldn't they? If Vandali saved as many people in the Orborn Kingdom as people he had killed in the Mage Shield Nation, would the bereaved families in the Mage Shield Nation forgive him? Certainly not. There was no way that they would. There wouldn't be thousands of unusual people who would forgive him. But if everything was made clear, every single person in the Orborn Kingdom would tell Vandali that he should forgive Heinz. They would tell him to forgive Heinz because he had saved many people, because he had achieved great things. Because he was a hero. Because from now on, he would save many more people, ease the unhappiness of thousands, of tens of thousands. He would make the people happier. Heinz's existence was beneficial for the nation. They would tell this single damp who hated him for killing a single person, his mother, to forgive him. This would be considered normal and undeniably correct in any world. The fact that Darsa was killed, the hatred boiling up within Vandali, everything would become details in the moving tale of Heinz. Forgiving him was the correct thing to do. Forgiving Heinz, who went around saving dampers like that little girl without being asked, was for the sake of everyone's happiness. And even that would become another detail to be added to Heinz's story. How could Vandali forgive him? The level of the grotesque mind skill has increased. You have acquired the Abestion skill. But Vandali would endure for now. Heinz believed that his deeds were done in atonement, but even those were achievements that he used to gather more popularity. However, Vandali was currently unable to defeat him. Even if he used death attribute magic and all kinds of skills, even if he asked Eleonora and the others to work with him, no matter what he did, he couldn't win. This was vengeance. For Vandali, this vengeance was a process necessary for accomplishing his own happiness. It wasn't the result. The level of the grotesque mind skill has increased. The level of the ABTH strength on skill has increased. But this hatred couldn't be suppressed. The fire of hatred couldn't be extinguished. Vandali felt as if his heart would freeze in place with the chill of fear. Oi, there. It's this one. Hurry up and capture it. That brat had silver coins, there should still be some left. Leave it to me, Oba-san. That was why Vandali had run away from that place. That was why he had left the city and come out to a place like this. He had made sure that nobody would get involved. To think we'd find it this quickly. We've finally run into some luck. I'm sure it's because we've been behaving well every day. Don't think badly of us. Because of the economic slump, selling fruit isn't enough to feed myself and get by. You don't need to worry. With your looks, I'm sure whoever we sell you to will take good care of you. Is this brat a boy or a girl? If it's a girl, she's not old enough to sell for much, you know? No, she has odd-colored eyes. If we tell the buyer it's a dump, won't we get paid more? Don't even bother. What are we going to do if that problematic A-class adventurer Sama gets involved? Now that you mention it, the savior has come to this city. His name was Heinz or something, was it? Heinz, the one Vandally hated so much was Heinz. Cut the chatter. Quick, tie the kid up and take him back to the city. The middle-aged woman who had been selling apples in the marketplace approached Vandally, who was kneeling in the dirt, completely motionless. You have acquired the scream skill. Ah. Scream skill. Ah, surprised by the unintelligible noise that Vandally was making and thinking that it was some kind of incantation, the woman and the men who were with her hastily tried to grab him. At this moment, if they had done everything they possibly could to escape, they might have been able to survive. Exclamation mark. A fearsome scream was released from Vandally's mouth. The levels of the scream, mental encroachment and labyrinth construction skills have increased. The woman and the men screamed, as if in response to Vandally's scream. The color drained from their hair and the light of consciousness faded from their eyes. Exclamation mark. But the middle-aged woman and the thugs led by her nephew weren't dead. They were moving vigorously. They were driving their fingers into their ears to try to escape the scream, biting their tongues into pieces and gouging their eyes out. But as if still unsatisfied with this, they used their eyes that should have been unable to see to find and seize each other and begin killing each other. Hate. Hate. What do I hate? Kill me. Kill him. Kill WHO. Kill everyone and him? My ears, my eyes, my tongue, my hands, my flesh, my organs, they disgust me. Exclamation mark. As Vandally felt a sense of liberation, as if the darkness gathered in his heart had been released into his surroundings, he lost consciousness. Feeling good, Vandally opened his eyes. He looked up at the sky to see that it was still the early afternoon. He had gone to the Adventurers Guild before noon, so only an hour or two should have passed, but he was in a bright mood, as if he had woken up in the morning after a sound sleep. But I feel really tired. A pleasant sense of fatigue. Confused, Vandally checked his status to find that he had almost 0 mana remaining. What had he done while he was asleep? Although there were bloodstains around him, there were no undead. Vandally-sama, are you alright? At that moment, Eleonora descended from the sky and forcefully lifted Vandally up into her arms. Ah, yes. I don't have much mana remaining, though. By the way, what exactly happened here? Vandally asked. That is what I want to ask. She told him. You said that you would be finished quickly, so we hid and waited only to see you rush out of the guild, fly over the outer walls and disappear somewhere. We couldn't even get in contact with you. Do you have any idea how worried we were? I'm sorry for making you worry, said Vandally, letting his body weight rest on Eleonora, who was holding onto him tightly. After using the goblin head communication device to contact Braga and the others who had been searching elsewhere, Vandally explained everything in chronological order. Vandally-sama, let us conquer and destroy this realm. These were Eleonora's first words when he finished. Her eyes had taken on a glassy appearance. She didn't appear to be joking. No, we can't win against Heinz right now, said Vandally. And even if we could, we can't conquer and destroy the realm. Zran, as well as New Arza and Borkus, who were talking through the communication devices, were in agreement with Eleonora's suggestion. It was unlikely that Sam or Zadyrus would object, either. Why not? Let's slaughter them, said Zran. Holy Sun. They are not humans. They are mere piles of excrement in the shape of people. Living incarnations of evil. New Arza exclaimed. Borkus roared. Let's butcher all of them, kid. Borkus and the other undead titans had learned of the Hartner Duchy's betrayal of 200 years ago. It would be an understatement to say that their previously favorable opinions of the duchy had plummeted into the ground. It seemed to have pierced the heavens in the negative direction. I'm happy that you're all willing to get angry on my behalf. But there are about as many good people as there are bad ones in the Hartner Duchy, said Vandally. Right, Braga? Taken aback, Eleonora and Zran looked at the black goblins and their partners that were with them. We have already abandoned our homeland, said Marie. Please do not be concerned about it, said another girl. Vandali had explained to them that he would release them with enough money to live for several months as long as they kept his secrets, but they had decided to follow Braga and the other black goblins. They felt grateful to Vandali from the bottom of their hearts, as he had cured them of their drug addiction and removed their slaves' collars and tattoos with magic. Of course, they had their own interests in mind, and perhaps they simply couldn't believe that Vandali would really release them. But they had chosen to come to Talersheim, and unlike those of the Mage Shield Nation's expedition army, it was definitely possible to make peace with them. As such, these girls who had been born in the Hartner Duchy were now citizens of Talersheim. Well, a third of the girls who had been working in the brothel were actually former refugees from the Sauron Duchy, but that wasn't something to be concerned about. Saying that everyone in the Hartner Duchy should be killed and that they were all incarnations of evil in front of these girls would cause them to feel uneasy. My bad, said Zran. I lost my cool there. Indeed, I'm sorry, Eleonora said to the girls. It is not like I was unaware that many of your circumstances are out of your control, either. No, I couldn't say anything, either. Thanks, King, said Braga. It's nothing, said Vandali. After all, I made a mistake after losing my cool just a short while earlier, too. Seeing that everyone seemed to have cooled off for now, he stood up. But if we simply keep allowing ourselves to be treated like this, we'll be nothing more than prey to be eaten by beasts. We will have our flesh picked at, our organs gouged out and our bones sucked clean. We must take back what has been stolen from us and make them think it was an accident. As for Heinz, he paused. We'll leave him be for now. We'll gather strength and wait for an opportunity. Ah, and I'll give up on the Hartner Duchy, he added. Everyone stared at Vandali blankly in response to his last sentence. I'll give up on registering as an adventurer in the Hartner Duchy, working here and conducting trade with it in the future, he said, elaborating. That was how much the Hartner Duchy had rejected the Titans. If they were going to reject Vandali and Talersheim so strongly, then he would return the favor and abandon them. Ah, excluding the cultivation villages, Vandali added. Everyone other than the goblins' partners laughed, muttering, I knew it. By the way, Vandali-sama, what is this? Eleonora asked. Has this boulder always been here? It's certain that this is no natural boulder, said Zran. They were looking at an enormous boulder that towered upwards behind Vandali. It was far larger than a tree in a forest. But its shape was stranger than its size. It was shaped like a huge skull, and its gaping mouth was large enough to fit a carriage inside. The inside of that mouth seemed to be connected to something. Warm air was flowing out from inside, as if the skull was breathing. At the very least, it's something that's harmless to us, said Vandali. The levels of the labyrinth construction, scream, automatic mana recovery, death attribute charm and surpass limits skills have increased. Name, Vandali, race, Damper, Dark Elf age, 7 years old title : Ghoul King, Eclipse King, Taboo name job, Venom Fist user level, 20 job history, death attribute Mage, Gloom Transmuter, Undead Tamer, Soul Breaker attributes, Vitality, 184 mana, 379,120,344 strength, 128 agility, 130 stamina, 119 intelligence, 761 passive skills, superhuman strength, level 3 rapid healing, level 5 death attribute magic, level 6 status effect resistance, level 7 magic resistance, level 3 dark vision death attribute charm, level 7, level up. Chant revocation, level 4 strengthen followers, level 8 automatic mana recovery, level 5, level up. Strengthen subordinates, level 4 venom secretion, claws, fangs, tongue, level 3 enhanced agility, level 1 body expansion, tongue, level 3 active skills, blood sucking, level 7 surpass limits, level 6, level up. Gloom transmutation, level 6 no attribute magic, level 5 mana control, level 4 spirit form, level 7 carpentry, level 4 engineering, level 3 cooking, level 4 alchemy, level 4 unarmed fighting technique, level 5 soul break, level 6 multicast, level 5 long distance control, level 6 surgery, level 3 parallel thought processing, level 5 materialization, level 4 coordination, level 3 high speed thought processing, level 3 commanding, level 1 farming, level 3 clothing, level 2 throwing, level 3 scream, level 3 new. Unique skills, God Slayer, level 3 grotesque mind, level 4, level up. Mental encroachment, level 3, level up. Labyrinth construction, level 4, new. Curses, experience gained in previous life not carried over, cannot learn existing jobs, unable to gain experience independently. Skill explanation, scream, a skill that produces effects through an emitted sound. Bats' ability to see things through their cries and special sense of hearing, or at least, this is how it is commonly interpreted in Lambda, though it is actually sonar. The effects of Mandragora's cries and Banshee's screams come from this skill. Because Vandali uses this skill simultaneously alongside the soul break and mental encroachment skills, in addition to dealing damage to mana and the sense of hearing in a wide radius, he is also able to perform an attack that causes its victims to die a most terrible death and insanity if they lose the mental battle with themselves. It can also simply be used to make one's voice travel further, without losing any clarity. This allows the user to perform a speech, without the need for a megaphone or microphone. Chapter 78, The departing ominous bird covers its trail and secretly threatens the capital. I understand it's harmless, but what do we do with it? Asked Eleonora. It resembles a dungeon. We leave it, Vandali replied. Seriously? We're not going to try going inside? Asked Zran. This is
Alright guys, how's it going? So far we've drawn 2 sketches of this animal mech that I've been drawing for a while now. Yeah, I guess 2 hours of this sketching. The result is pretty much good. I enjoyed drawing this so much that I just went on and added ideas and couples of stuff that I've been looking at some reference on, and yeah, this is actually really up to the stuff of my standard when it comes to mech, and yeah, I can still perfect this in the near future if I would decide to add this in some of my comics or some of my personal work that I'm doing. But yeah, the entire fully mech coyote here, and this what's it called again? This wildcat, Nikes. I don't know. Fudge! I was I was so confident about this its name earlier. What's it called again? Let me. Here we go. Lynx. Why did I say Nikes? Okay, so Lynx here. I think it's really interesting. I was actually I draw this because I am planning to add a lynx in one of my comics as one of the tame beasts there, and but I did a mech for this one because I just want to try and test my skills on it. It's actually it actually turned out pretty good. Maybe I can add some few more details here, but yeah, the simplicity is actually making it look so good. I'll probably add more variations of this in the near future, because this would look really good in some of my plans in the near future. But yeah, it looks like he has an armor too, especially on the face. You can actually put this on a make this in a helmet and put this on some guy who has an armor, and it will look good. The coyote is actually really good also. Next will be probably a wolf. Try to make it more spikier, more intricate compared to this simple design. This is if I will give this a story, he'll probably a scouting robot trying to scout things around it The antenna is probably a transmitter to some to the main base, giving information. Well, the cat might be an assassin type, but it's huge claws. It's a stealth type mission. I'll probably put some hidden weapons, probably in the back. The pose is actually really good. I copied this in one of those Pinterest reference I have, and it turned out really nice. Next will be a horse or a unicorn. I don't know what I'll do with this, but let's see what will happen in the next video. Next stream, I mean. So yeah, this is the third sketching session we have for my anatomy and reference creation over here. So this is the first one, the second one with the full body sketches. First one is mostly heads, with the exception for one of my main characters that I draw over here. And yeah, from this random characters that I piled up, man and female, and now animals, mechanical animals. I'm kind of excited what I can do with the rest of the animals I'm planning to add. I also probably add a dinosaur and probably 2 types of birds. Let's see what I can do. Yeah, but I'll finish this horse first. Yeah, it turns out really nice. Let's save that so that we won't lose it if we will suddenly start on like what happened earlier. Still can't believe that it suddenly turned off on its own. Maybe some fluctuation happened. But yeah, here it is. Okay. And for now, about the Death Mage who doesn't want a 4th time, let's see. I'll show some some illustrations. Where do I have it? Yeah. Okay. Whoa. I can't seem to find some of the weird. Was it 5? Dude, I'm sorry about this. Kind of strange. Some of the fan arts, oh no, not the fan arts, the illustration are not as the same as the. Let me show you guys. Yeah, it doesn't match with the volume that I am currently reading. Let's see. Okay. So this is their fandom webpage, their wiki. So let's try. If you're also wondering about the rest of the story, there's actually a manga for this. Although the art style is kind of different compared to the ones we see here in yeah, there's a manga and a light novel. Oh, so there's also a web novel. Interesting. Yeah, the difference with the web novels and the light novels are actually written in actual paper already. Web novels is like the prototype of the story, and the light novel is like the finalized with some variations compared to the web novel. Depends on the author. Yeah, so I can't seem to find main page something. No, this is not it. Yeah, Asian terminology. I can't seem to find the fan art, the illustrations. Let's see. Yeah, it just gives me this. Let's see if we can find. I don't know. Yeah, I can't seem to find that. Yeah, it's weird. I don't know if that. Yeah, it just gives me the synopsis. Back then, it actually shows me immediately the visual novels. Hmm. I really want to show you guys the illustrations. Hmm. Is there any wall pages? Maybe. Hmm. To think that there's like an entire data of this light novel, because there's like descriptions of every armor, yeah, every spells, creatures, and characters over here. Really strong fandom. Yeah, it's kind of sad that I can't show you guys that. Well, let's try searching it. Illustrations. And go for the images. Hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah, here we go. So we found it. Volume 3, Volume 4. Yeah. Hmm. So I think we haven't shown you guys those parts. Okay, so I think this is Patches. Yeah. The patchwork zombie that Vandally made. Oh, I should probably explain some more. Yeah. Yeah, she is. The a lot of she's been combined with some of the adventurers that went against the Titan City, and combined with some other monster parts. Mm. And here was Vandally when he was crowned as the king of the Titan City. And oh, that's your bye. Okay, so the spear dude and the the guy that burned his mother, the priest, and yeah, and then we had the vampire who went against Vandalist vampire, and that magic that spirit magic that he did, where he multiplied his hands. And Darsa over here, we're talking to Vandally, and this is really cute. She's got probably the part where she tried to stop Vandally to get out of the city. And now Rod Courtney and Kanata when he resurrected Kanata back to life, and Kanata demanding some stuff. I actually don't really like Kanata's character. He's yeah, he doesn't really care about other people's feelings. The same as Rod Courtney. Uh, that's like the downside of him being a god also, because he doesn't care about the feelings and experiences of the every individual that he is being resurrecting, and just going on his selfish plans. And he just keeps making problems after problems due to his stupidity. And now he's putting these individuals that to the task to kill once again vandally, and it's gonna take a lot of really awful issues in the near future. Especially now that Hero A actually resurrected another, uh, the recently deceased guy to once again murder vandally, and it turns out the Kanata is very immoral and have some really bad issues, mental issues, and yeah, he's causing more problems compared to Vandally, I think, because he's just really unhinged in killing our other people, innocent people, to that. And Vandally just living on his own and trying to be a good person. It does kill people and monsters alike, but he does that in order to protect himself and protect other people. But Kanata is just killing discriminately, so it's yeah, they're both stupid. And yeah, we have I wish they just give you information of the names. I can't remember her name. I'm so bad in remembering the names. uh yeah, the chap, the mhm. Vandali and Sakura. Yeah, yeah. So this is the champion, the adventurer that handed over Z- uh, Vida, not Vida, Bastia to the priest to be burned, and this was that scene. Really interesting illustration. I love the expression that Vanity is giving out. Uh, he is trying to fix up the stuff that he did wrong, but still, uh, I think Vandali is also in the right, being angry still, even now that he's also like realizing that he's making him as the reason why he changed his way, but it's still kind of hurt him for doing so. I don't know. For me, I'm in Vandali's side for this one. Uh, yeah, I understand both of their logic in this situation, but I favored Vandally, the main character, more. Uh, Sometimes feelings are really hard to forget, even especially revenge. I think uh, Vandally is truly justified to do so because that was his mother, and the only thing that he cared most at that time, and it was taken from him. And now, uh, uh, this guy is trying to justify his means by uh, trying to make it the reason or the purpose of him helping other uh, half-breed humans in order to save them. It is kind of yeah. Both of them are in the right, I think, but I favorite Vandally most. Oh, now that's a spoiler site, so we won't go to that. But we'll see that in the near future, whoever that was. But yeah, yeah, it is kind of strange that the volumes and chapters in what I am reading right now are kind of different. Because this is volume 6, but we're actually still at uh, volume 4. Kind of strange. Uh, yeah. Well, let's just see what will happen in the near future. I bet we can see more what will happen with Vandally interacting with the current country that he is in and the people that betray the Titans. Let's see what will be the revenge that will happen in that point. And also, let's look forward to uh, more progress in the story, especially now that there is a guy, Kanata, has been resurrected and on the hunt for Vandally. Let's see if he can put up a fight and uh, see what will Vandally do when he meets them. Okay, so far that is the story, and for the sketch, yes, this is the end of this live stream. Thank you very much for watching, and if you've enjoyed this art and adventure live stream, please leave a like and subscribe if you want more of this. I'll see you guys next time and have a good day. Thank you. Goodbye.